IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Friday, and that means it is time for the Friday Free for All Mailbag. Y'all see it right there at the bottom. Friday Free for All Mailbag. That means today y'all get to decide what we discuss. This is for our YouTube subscribers and listeners. This is something where you guys pick. This isn't you have to be a member of the message board like the buy so hold. This is for our longtime loyal or new and fresh to the channel subscribers and listeners. You guys get to determine what topics we discuss. We'd prefer that you stick to Notre Dame topics, to recruiting topics, to college football topics, but every now and then there's some other things that you guys want to discuss, and we'll do our best to answer them. So go ahead and submit your questions in the chat. Put MB if you could, or a mailbag emoji. That way we know that it's part of a mailbag question, not just normal conversation as part of the chat. If you want to get something pushed to the front of the line, go ahead and throw us a super chat. And we greatly appreciate that. If you're going to put a super chat in, but you're not a member of the message board, you know what? I'd say keep that super chat money. Go to the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sign up for our message board. You're going to get way, way more for your money if you do that than if you do something on the show today. We're going to do it. We're going to rock and roll here for the next 3 hours, Trevor, and get ready to go. But also a reminder for folks, tomorrow we are having the Irish Breakdown Tailgate. We are going to finish up our food prep and purchases tonight. When my dad gets in town, we'll be in the Joyce lot. He told me he actually did buy a flagpole, so it sounds like we may actually have an IB flagpole. My dad's on top of things, as always. So hopefully that works and we can get that set up, and you'll see the IB flag because, we have several IB flags here. But we'll probably leave the house sometime around noon, and it may be 11:30 noon, and with the hopes of getting there, and set up by 1 o'clock. So I will post if you've never been, the Joyce lot has poles that have the lot numbers. So Joyce lot's the whole thing in front of the stadium and the Joyce Center, that big parking lot. And they have poles, which kind of show you what row and what area you're in. I will take a picture of the pole that we are at, because it's not assigned parking where we'll be. And I will post it on the message board, and I'll also tweet it out. So if you'll look for that. And like I said, if you're a member, you'll see it on the board. If you're on Twitter, you'll see it there. Those are the best things that I can do. If you're not on Twitter, find someone who is, and you guys communicate. We would love to see you guys. A reminder: there is no fee. This is our thank you to you guys for all your support throughout the course of the year. It is not for members only, meaning if you want to bring your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your buddy, your mom, your dad, your cousin, whoever, your kids, whoever. We'll have some snacks for kids as well. We'll have food, we'll have drinks, and I'm looking forward to having a good time. Trev's going to be there, so you guys will get a chance to meet Trevor in person. Most of you for the first time, me for the first time, actually in person, which is still kind of wild. But yeah, that just come whenever, if you want to stay there a long time, we'd love that. Just make sure you bring your appetite, because I'm spending a lot of money on food, and I don't want to have to take it all home. So although there may be some couple snack things like, oops, I forgot to put these out. Sorry, that I have to take home. But the food that I decide to put out, I would love it if you guys would consume it and enjoy yourselves and have a great time. So yeah, my wife said, and if you can't find it, walk around Joyce a lot and listen for the familiar Brian voice, because I'll probably be talking the entire time, because that's what I do. People ask questions, we get to know each other, we talk, and Trevor, this will be your first time. There's some stories and some info I will share at tailgates that I won't on a show, because it's not out there. It's meant to be sort of an intel thing, a behind the scenes thing. So there may be some of that a little bit at the tailgate tomorrow. Depends on what questions you guys ask and what more things I gather. So anyway, that's what we got going on. I'd love to see all of you coming in town. Some people say, I'll try to get over there. Don't try. Do. Get over there into the Joyce lot and come meet the crew at Irish Breakdown and all the other members. A lot of you guys talk on the chat. You've never actually met. This is a great chance for you guys to meet. I'm looking forward to it. This is one of my favorite times of the year. I wish we could do more. It's a lot. It's hard, especially for day games. But my dad's already talking. He's like, well, if they make the playoff and they host a game, we're going to tailgate for that. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll let people know. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started here after Trevor has a little quick message for y'all. and then we'll get started on our mailbag.
Yeah, guys, I'm excited. I'm excited to see everybody tomorrow. Brian, you brought it up. I'm pumped to finally meet you in person. You know, we've done how many shows together, and right now in my mind, you're about
talked on the phone how many times?
Right? That's what I'm saying.
I'm a little bigger than the screen, Trev. I'm a little taller than that.
But I'm excited. Sounds like it's going to be a fun little exclusive tailgate, which will be fun. Get to find out some cool intel. Another cool piece of intel that you can learn, at least from me tomorrow, from my fellow bettors in IB Nation, learn a little bit about MyBookie. So there's going to be a lot of good games going on tomorrow. And if you're going to be anything like me, I'm going to throw down some bets on some of the college football games that are going on. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure I sign up with promo code IRISH, IRISH. Pretty easy to remember. I'm sure we all know how to spell it, but make sure when you sign up, you use promo code IRISH. What that's going to do for you is you are going to get a deposit bonus. It's going to essentially double the money that you put in. So if you deposit $10, MyBookie is going to credit you with $10 additional, which will be pretty awesome. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you get signed up with their loyalty rewards program to earn extra cash just for playing, which is fantastic. There's going to be a lot of different games going on Saturday, a lot of interesting spreads that are out there. Spoiler alert, one that I took is I took Michigan to cover at 14.5. So we'll see how that goes because IU has a history of blowing out their opponents, but this is one of the best defenses they will have faced. So be sure to check out MyBookie. Help me out before I talk to you guys about it on Saturday. Go ahead and get signed up, but make sure you check them out because MyBookie is the sports book that gives you control and rewards you for every moment of play.
So, Trevor, with that in mind, it is time to start the IB Nation Friday free-for-all mailbag. We got started off with a little super sticker from our guy, John A1. John, thank you so much for that. And then John has another happy Friday, IB. Happy Friday to you as well, John. And then we also have another one here from my guy, John A1. What you got to know, Trevor, John A1 is one of the OGs, man. John's been with us from like the beginning. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people in here, like the next super chat from Alan Watson. I mean, I remember Alan going back for years. He's been with us a lot. So there's a lot of crew. Today's one of those days where I'm just reminded of how much I appreciate those people that have been with us from the beginning. I was unaware of this until recently that you are actually one of those OGs. You weren't a poster, but you were someone who listened to the show a lot. So
yeah, I've been listening to the podcast. Yeah, of course, been listening to the podcast since day one, man. I've loved it, and it's awesome being on the other side of the table now. But John A1 with the super chat. Thank you, John. If Tay Johnson plays well at cornerback this year, will the 2024 defensive back class be better than the 2016 class with Love, Vaughn, Elliott, Studstill, and Pride?
I'm taking that question to mean, will it be better than what that class was as freshmen? I don't know. I don't think so because that 2016 class, if we're just talking about as freshmen, that 2016 class, I mean, they all played as freshmen. I mean, Julian Love started a bunch of games. Dante Vaughn was actually the best of all of them as a freshman. Troy Pride played a lot late in the second half of the year. Jalen Elliott played a little bit as a freshman, a lot of special teams. Devin Studd still played a lot as a freshman. I mean, if you look at the freshman DB class this year, though, it's really only been Leonard Moore. I mean, Carson Hobbs played a little bit in mop-up minutes, but he hasn't played a ton. Bronte's been hurt. Tabron Benny Powell's been hurt. And Kennedy Urlacher's played a couple games in mop-up minutes. He's mostly been a special teams guy. So this, even if Bronte, let's say Bronte steps in, I mean, I don't expect Bronte to play a whole lot. To be honest with you, I think he's just there learning and providing depth. I don't expect his first game in game 9 to be a game where he comes in and he's like the third corner and he plays a ton. I mean, hopefully he can get in and play some mop-up minutes because the good news is Bronte could play every snap from now until the end of the regular season and not lose a season of eligibility because the 8 games have passed. These last 4, any freshman who hasn't played yet can play all the next 4 games and it not be something where he's going to lose eligibility. So he could play a lot. I just don't expect that to happen. But even if he does, that's still really only 2 guys that have played a lot from that class that compared to the 2016 class where all those guys played. So long-term, could that freshman class end up be better than that? I mean, it's going to be a lot. That's asking a lot. I mean, Julian Love was a consensus All-American. Troy Pride was a 3-year starter and a 4th-round NFL draft pick. Jalen Elliott was a captain and a 3-year starter. Dante Vaughn would have been a lot better if not for injuries kind of jacking his back up a little bit. He wasn't the same player later on. Devin Studd still kind of regressed after that. I think the class has a chance to be better overall. I think Leonard Moore could be a stud. Carson Hobbs has a chance to be a starter at Notre Dame. Bronte has a chance to be an outstanding player. I just don't know if there's enough of those type of dudes in that class compared to that class. And then the other problem is that class didn't have a really good secondary class following it up. Notre Dame fell really short in secondary recruiting at 2017, where this class is being followed up by Dallas Gold, Mark Zachary, Cree Thomas at cornerback, and then Jadon Blair, Brandon Logan, and Ethan Long at safety. So going to be a little bit more competition for some playing time in future seasons than what that 2016 class went to. But I hope if it's better, then boy, that's going to be outstanding. That's going to be outstanding. But I don't think it will be as true freshmen. I don't care what Bronte does the last 4 games. That class had just way more guys that played. And they honestly had to, Trevor. It's not like they were just so good that they all beat people out. They had to play. You didn't have anybody else at a lot of times at those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. The sample size from the 2024 defensive back class is just too small. The glimpses we've seen from Leonard Moore are very promising, but it's tough to compare the whole class. I agree.
We have several super chats to start us off, Trev. So I'm going to roll through those, and then we'll get back to the other questions.
Cool. Fantastic. Super chat from Alan Watson. Thank you, Alan. I believe Notre Dame did the playoff a huge gift by losing earlier this year. If they hadn't lost, then there would be a very good possibility they would have the number 1 ranking, but only be the 5th seed, not on the first year anyways.
So I was kind of with you, Alan, at first and believe that yeah, I don't know. I kind of felt like you were going to go a different direction in this. I feel like in a lot of ways, the loss to Northern Illinois, I won't say it's a good thing. Like, I'm glad it happened, but it certainly has somewhat galvanized this football team. There's no question about that. I mean, I think they've grown a lot as a team that I don't know if they would have grown that way had they not lost. But I honestly would have liked to have kind of been the number 1 ranked team and got the 5th seed, because I feel like in that instance, you'd have even more. I mean, I feel like that path at number 5 is going to be so much cleaner getting to the semifinals. And that's sort of the reward for Notre Dame. Like, there's the reward for the conference champs, right, Trev? I mean, you get first round bye. And I feel like the reward for Notre Dame, if they're a top 4 team and they get the 5 seed, is they get a reward as well. Yeah, you got to play the extra game. You should, because you didn't play in the conference championship game. So Notre Dame should have to play that extra game. I'm not someone that believes, well, Notre Dame's number 1, they should get a bye. Well, they get their bye during conference championship week. That's when they get their bye. But you're playing the 12 seed, and then you're going to play the 4th best conference champion in round 2. If you're that good of a team, that actually, to me, might be better for you, because if you look at this year, for example, there's a chance that the number 4 seed is going to not be a top 8 team. Where if you were, down lower and you were a 7 or an 8 seed and you've got to play a 9 or a 10 seed, you might be playing somebody that's better than the team you're going to face in the second round. Then in the second round, you've now got to play a 1 or a 2 seed. So, I mean, I'm always going to want the 5 seed. And I don't care if it's first year, second year, third year, fourth year. I'm always going to want the 5 seed, because it's just more often than not, it's going to be the cleanest path. There will be times that Notre Dame gets a really good matchup in a 7-10 game, and then maybe the 2 seed's a team that they match up really well with. There's always that, Trevor. But in theory, without the context of knowing who's going to be in those spots, the 5 seed still gives Notre Dame the cleanest path, with playing the 12 seed and then the 4th best conference. I mean, go back over the years. How often is the 4th best conference champ a team that's really a concern for a Notre Dame team that's undefeated and the number 1 ranked team in the country?
No, it's a good point. I mean, I think I think you hit it perfectly. Is depending on the draw, the 5th seed's fantastic. And another thing too to take into consideration is, the bye is nice because you have you basically get the free pass on to the next round. I understand that, but I mean, what we've seen a lot from teams across the board in college football this year is that they're a lot of teams are very rhythm based, and they get into a groove a little bit. And if you're sitting back on a bye and you play a team like a Notre Dame team at the 5th seed that's kind of humming, it could play a little bit of a factor. There's some teams that come out a little flat off of bye weeks, so who knows? I think it'll be interesting to see what some of those matchups look like this year in the expanded playoffs. But I agree. And another thing too, like I agree that there would have been a possibility they would have been ranked number 1, but if everybody else's schedule played out the same way, I still think it probably would be Oregon, I think. But I think Notre Dame would be somewhere in the top 4. So
I think Notre Dame would have finished number 1 when it's all said and done. I think right now they'd be number 2. Right now, I still project that Oregon's going to lose a game, and that's when I think Notre Dame would have leaped up. Right? So like I would say, it's not that I disagree with you, because I think if you're projecting where Notre Dame would be based on right now who's undefeated and those type of things, yes, I think Notre Dame's overall schedule, top to bottom, is a little bit more challenging than Oregon's. You could at least argue that. But those top 2 games of Ohio State and Boise State are really tough games. And when you compare those to Notre Dame's games against A&M and Louisville, they're comparable, but neither is as good. You can maybe argue Louisville's better than Boise State. I don't know that you can prove that other than just making this, well, they're in a Power 5 and they're not. But Boise State's handling business against quality teams. They smacked Washington State. They took Oregon down to the wire. When they play, that's a good – and they got arguably the best football player in college football. They got the best player in college football on their team. So I would say 2 right now. The number 2 is where they'd be if they didn't lose to Northern Illinois. That's assuming that we think that Notre Dame would have learned the necessary lessons without a loss and been galvanized as a team the way that they have been over the last couple months. So, 5 for me is always where I think I would want them to be, but they didn't earn it this year, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Super chat from Iden Benami. Thank you, Iden. Where will the IB tailgate be tomorrow? Stomach will be empty.
I don't know what that means, Iden. Please let me know. It will be in the Joy slot. I don't know where. So the pass that I have is not an assigned pass. There's 2 types of spots in Joyce, and I believe actually it's Stadium Lot is where there's assigned seats. Joyce, it's just all those different spots, and it just depends on when you get there. And so I don't know exactly where we will be. That's why I was going to kind of tweet out where we are, the poll by where we are. We always try to kind of park by a poll so it's easy to find us. But I don't know how packed the stadium's going to be at 1:00 tomorrow. I mean, especially for Florida State and all that. I'm not quite sure. Hopefully we'll be able to get something somewhat closer to the stadium, but usually it's in the second level. So like, if you look like second furthest, there's the light right in front of Joyce Center, and then there's the one behind it. Usually we're in that second one when we get there, when we do. So that'll be where we are, but I'll do my best to find as close a spot as possible.
And thank you to Irish Blooded. MT, like empty. His stomach will be empty because you said you're bringing a lot of food.
Got it. Cool. All right. Let's do this one from my guy, Tyler Evans. He's got 2 of them, actually. True.
Okay. Good deal. Thank you for the super chat, Tyler. What do you think of the quarterback switch at USC? Is this a desperation move by Lincoln Riley?
I don't know that it's a desperation move. I think he's looking to add a little bit of a spark to the offense. I mean, there's kind of 2 ways of looking at this. One is Lincoln Riley sort of blaming Miller Moss for his own failures. And I think there's something to that. And what I mean by that is I'm looking at the season totals for Lincoln Riley. I mean, not for Lincoln Riley, excuse me, for Miller Moss. It tells a very disturbing story that says a whole lot more about Lincoln Riley than it does Miller Moss. So USC has a running back named Woody Marks, who's got 878 yards in 9 games, and he's averaging 97.6 yards per game. And he's a pretty good running back. Their number 2 running back, Quentin Joyner, is averaging 8.4 yards per carry. Okay. And they got a big old freshman running back named Brian Jackson, who's a good player as well. And that sounds pretty good, right, Trev? I mean, wow, it's 2 pretty good players, right? They're putting up good numbers. I mean, between the 2 of them, they're well over 6 yards a carry, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at Woody Marks and you're like, he's got some 100-yard games. But the reality is he just doesn't use them a whole lot, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at like Woody Marks, for example. against Maryland. And in that game, Woody Marks carried the ball 17 times for 82 yards. As a team, USC ran the ball 24 times for 81 yards. And they asked Miller Moss to throw the ball 50 times. In a game they led. In a game that they led, I believe, for a good chunk of the game, because Maryland came back in that game and won. And, you know, you look at, they were up 21-7 at halftime, Trevor. And then you look at other games. So, like you say, okay, wow, Woody Marks against Penn State, 20 carries for 111 yards. Quentin Joyner, 3 for 82. So that between the two of them, 23 carries. As a team, again, in that game, USC carried the ball 24 times. That's it. In a game, they led 20-6. No attempt to you know, have balance, you know, use time, none of that. And you know, your offense sputters, and eventually you start having some issues in the pass game. And so I'm looking at this guy, Woody Marks, and I'm looking at Quentin Joyner, and between the two of them, they have 197 carries in 9 games. That's less than 20 per game. Here's the passing attempts for Miller Moss, a player who's making his in his first season as a starter: 36, 30, 51, 45, 38, 34, 50, 28, and 50. It should be noted, in the 2 games where he threw the fewest amount of passes, they outscored their opponents 90-20. And in the Utah State game, they ran the ball 37 times for 249 yards, 5 touchdowns. They had 4 rushing touchdowns against Rutgers, but they didn't run the ball enough. To me, this is a failure of Lincoln Riley as a play caller to not recognize it. To me, Lincoln Riley looks at it and says, well, this is what I want to call, and it's up to you to execute it, as opposed to saying, okay, this is what I want to call within the framework of what you're good at as a quarterback, and not putting this huge burden on you as a quarterback to carry our football team. And he didn't do that. You know, you go on the road against Washington and you run the ball 29 times on the road against a team who's a very good road team. And then you're going to wonder why, you know, Miller Moss is going to make some mistakes and turn the ball over. Well, hey, guess what? You've put a lot on that kid. Washington had not allowed a 200-yard passer since September 14th against Washington State. In the 5 games in between the USC game, they gave up 53 yards, 115 yards, 113 yards, 108 yards, and 124 yards. They only allowed Indiana to pass for 124 yards in the game that they lost Indiana. And your strategy going into that game is, let's ask Miller Moss to dominate that defense, and then you wonder why he struggles. So I think it's not him. It's not a desperation move as much as it's scapegoating Miller Moss and saying, well, the offense is not working. We're not scoring points as an offense. You know, we scored over 40 points twice this season. That's it. Twice. They've only scored over 30 points 2 other times. They've scored 27, 24, 17, 28, 21 games. They've gone over 30 points, 30 or more points 4 times in 9 games. Well, let's blame Miller Moss for that, not us as a team who is, you know, out here trying to, you know, win some games with talented running backs and a big offensive line. So I think the issue is Lincoln Riley. And so I don't think it's desperation. I think it's Lincoln Riley's complete unwillingness to look in the mirror and realize he is the problem. His arrogance, his stubbornness is putting that kid in position to fail. And when he fails, he benches him, and basically he's getting blamed. And you put this other kid in, and he's going to ask that kid probably do the same thing. Now, if he goes out there and they start running the ball more and doing this and doing that, that's fine. That's good. That's what they should do. They should be more balanced this year. That's one of the reasons I thought USC was going to be better. I thought not having Caleb Williams was going to force him to go back the way they were at Oklahoma in his first few years at Oklahoma, where they were running the ball for over 200 yards a game. But just like Ryan Day at Ohio State, and I've said this, Trev, you and I have talked about this, the further Ryan Day got away from Urban Meyer, the softer that Ohio State football team got. I'm not saying they're soft. The less physical they've become, because they're not soft. And I don't want to I don't like that word unless it really needs it. So I'm going to take that part back. The less physical they've become. The same thing with Lincoln Riley. The further and further away he got from Bob Stoops, the less physical his teams have become. And now they're just downright soft. And not soft in the players are soft. They're soft in their mentality that comes from how the coach develops that team and calls games. Now, if they change that the next 3 games, good for them, but they should have done that with Miller Moss in the game. And I think they set that kid up to fail. So it's not a desperation move. It's a scapegoating move by Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, he's just looking for somebody to blame. I agree 100%. I'll never understand, and I could be a little biased here because I watch Notre Dame's offense week in and week out, but I will never understand teams who are just so quick to abandon the run at any point in time. What did we say, Brian, for the Ohio State-Penn State game? Whatever team controls the line of scrimmage is going to win that game. And Ohio State ran the ball well. Ohio State also, in their games that they lost, in those big top 5 matchups that they lost, they got outrushed in every single one of them. It's not a coincidence, right? Like it's, and so you take that and you look at that through the lens of USC currently, is you're asking a first-year starter to do way too much. I mean, Caleb Williams was a returning Heisman-winning quarterback, and it didn't work for him last year. Went 7-5, you know? So that's the handicap with Lincoln Riley, is he's just his almost stubbornness to not run the football. You're just setting up, no matter what quarterback you have, you're setting that quarterback up for failure, man. Setting him up for failure. Another super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. What do you think of the move by Florida saying they are going to stick with Billy Napier?
The interesting thing about this one, Trevor, is when it's, I'll be honest, I understand it now and it makes perfect sense now, but I didn't really think about it before until it was kind of laid out. That what I read was, and again, this isn't my argument, this is what I read, and I find it very compelling, is that basically Florida looked at it and was like, look, we'd owe this guy $26 million. Okay. And to buy him and the entire, this is what the article said, to buy him and the entire staff out, it's going to cost about $40 million. Then when you add in the fact that starting next year, they're going to have a salary basically of about $20 million a year per the house settlement. You're now talking about a school that is a state school that's not a state school that's like reveling in money, has this giant, booster base like a Harvard or a Yale or a Notre Dame, schools that have just insanely big, amount of money. You know what I mean? So when I look at it, I think you're going to see a lot more schools be less willing to do early buyouts with coaches that are going to cost them a lot of money, and say we got to ride this guy and then do whatever we can. It's going to be a lot cheaper for us to kick in some money to help him build the program and restore the program and do all this. It's going to cost us a lot, so we have to put $10 extra million into the program. Okay, $10 extra million plus the $20 million you're going to have to pay for salary is a whole lot better than the $60 million I just laid out, with the $40 million in buyouts for him and his staff, plus the $20 million salary. It's a business, and you have to make business decisions. And with no clear, when Florida fired Ron Zook, I mean, they did so because they wanted Urban Meyer, and that was a no-brainer. There's no Urban Meyer out there that we know of. And I don't mean that to say whoa, did we really know Urban was going to be that good? Yeah, everybody thought Urban was going to be that good because of what he did at Bowling Green in Utah. I mean, there was this thought with a guy that coached at Notre Dame and his background, there was this thought that Urban Meyer's a star in the making. I don't know if there's that kind of coach that is would be a fit at Florida right now. So I think that factors into it as well, where maybe they might be more willing to pony up that money to go get the next Urban Meyer. Are they willing to really pony up that much money? And then you'd have to pay a buyout to Ole Miss to get a Lane Kiffin, or a buyout to Indiana to get a Kurt Signetti, or, whatever you're then going to pay your new coaching staff. So let's say they were like, you know what? We screwed up when we fired Dan Mullen. We're going to rehire Dan Mullen. No buyout there. Cool. You think Dan Mullen's coming there for free? So you're having to buy out the old staff, pay the new staff, and then on top of that, you've got this $20 million salary coming up for your roster the next year. A lot of these schools can't afford that. And so you're going to see these schools get stuck with coaches. And I think what that's going to do is going to create a process where you're going to start seeing college football a lot more recycled coaches getting head coaching jobs. Because I'm going to bank on the guy that has a proven track record even if he failed at his last job or whatever. I'm going to go with the guy that's got a proven track record rather than investing money in some guy that is coming from Louisiana or Coastal Carolina or Liberty or wherever else that I could fire in a couple of years and just pay the buyout and do whatever else. You know what I mean? Well, that's a little harder to do now because you're going to have a $20 million per year salary that you have to pay your team. And it's one of those things, Trevor, where you ever read something like, dude, that's so obvious. Why did I not think of that? And that's kind of how I felt reading that article. It was like, dude, that makes total sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You know, but it's like, yeah. So that think about that when you're thinking about what are they going to do with Mike Norvell? In their case, maybe they think it's worth it because hiring Deion might bring in a revenue stream into Florida State that kind of offsets that cost a little bit. We might be able to fundraise a little bit more if they know we're going to go get Deion, that kind of thing. But that's a unique situation that's not necessarily true at Florida or other schools that may be thinking about firing a coach. So it was really interesting. And it really did not, as soon as I read it, it clicked, Trevor, like, oh gosh, that makes so much sense. I didn't even think about that. But honestly, before that, I really didn't think about that. I was like, what the heck are they keeping him for? I was stunned. Are they really excited about how competitive they've been during a 4-4 start? And then you laid out, there is some of that. Like, hey, these kids are battling. They play with Florida for 4 quarters. They play with Georgia for 4 quarters. You know what I mean? Like, turns out Miami's really good. They lost this team is competitive. They haven't quit on him. That says something. But it's got to be more than that. This is Florida. You're 4-4. And then you read that article and you're like, oh, combine that with this, totally makes sense why they're keeping Billy Napier.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different factors than just looking at the overall 4-4 record. The money thing makes a lot of sense, especially when you don't have as big of a revenue stream as some of those other heavy hitters in college football. And I do think that he is getting a little bit of slack for his resume. Like, I think on one hand, you have, okay, you look at the availability of what coaches are going to be freed up or what coaches realistically with a buyout of Billy Napier could they go after in 2025. And then you also have to look, would that coach have done any better playing in the same season? Texas A&M, Tennessee, a competitive Tucky team, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, I think there's a lot of different factors that factor into why they are keeping him, but the money thing makes the most sense to me. Super chat from AST12321. Thank you for the super chat. Has Vince had beat reporters from schools his son is being recruited to contacting him for scoops? If so, has it been weird for him to be on that side?
He's being recruited at a little lower level than that. So it's not quite the same. There's not like websites covering the schools that he's being recruited by. But I think it has been helpful being on this side as far as it's helped him as a dad with kind of knowing what questions to ask, knowing what things to think about and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I think. Yeah, it's he's excited. He's excited because the visit he's going on this weekend is his second visit to a school. So, like, things are starting to get a little serious at that point in time.
That's awesome. I think we got Allen's already.
Okay. Looks like I didn't delete a couple of these. I thought I did. That's weird. A couple of these super chats kind of popped back up at the bottom. So, yeah, because there's John A1's about Tay Johnson. There's Allen's. There's Iden's. Tyler. I thought Tyler had a second one. Oh, that was the Napier one. So, okay, we got through the super chat, so we can get back up to the top. Got Paul Hamilton.
Good deal. Real quick, before we read off Paul Hamilton's, I saw in the chat that it's also Archer's birthday today.
Nice. Nice.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Archer. I hope Purdue smacks Ohio State tomorrow. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. Happy birthday, my man. Happy birthday.
All righty. Boiler up, baby. Paul Hamilton asks, Mailbag, if Tyler Buchner had reached his full potential as a quarterback at Notre Dame, what would that have looked like? National championship, Heisman, etc.?
I don't know about Heisman, but look, I think if Tyler Buchner had reached his full potential, he would look a lot like Riley Leonard looks now, but more experienced in this offense. I think Riley's faster than Tyler. Riley's taller than Tyler. Riley has a little bit better ball placement than Tyler. Tyler's more explosive. Like there's fast. Tyler's very sudden with his movements. I mean, he's a shake and bake kind of guy. He's a strong runner also. Tyler also throws a better deep ball than Riley does. At least I thought he did at Notre Dame when, you'd see him right. But because reaching his full potential would have meant he wouldn't have lost his throwing motion with that quarterback coach he hired in high school. Tyler Buchner as a junior in high school was special. I don't care what level he played at. He was special. 4,000 plus passing yards and 1,600 plus rushing yards is freaking elite. I don't care where you're playing. But he just, that COVID year where he missed his senior year because of COVID, he worked with the quarterback's coach. And look, what's the point of having a quarterback's coach if he's not trying to fix something? So what I found with a lot of quarterback coaches, Trevor, not all, like the guy that trains with like Brady Hart and Noah Grubbs, I think does a great job because you'll see his guys aren't all robots of each other. There are certain principles he teaches, but he also kind of works within the natural delivery and framework of what these kids have. But a lot of these coaches like, well, I got to convince you have a problem so that I can then convince you that I need to be paid to fix it. And I just think that's happened way too much with these young people. And that's what happened with Tyler. He changed his motion in high school and he just was never the same guy. And then the injuries hurt too. But look, I think Notre Dame would have been a really hard team to beat this season with Tyler Buchner quarterback because he's a guy that would have been in year 4 at Notre Dame, right? 21, 22. Yeah, he'd be a senior. He'd be in the system. He'd be in the school for 4 years. I think they'd be really, really outstanding. Really outstanding. Like he's a top 50 player in my opinion. Heisman Trophy is quite a something to put on the kid. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 quarterback in the country and had a phenomenal college career. Never won a Heisman. So I don't put as much into Heisman as I do that. But yeah, would Notre Dame have been a much better team last year with a fully developed, not having gotten injured, not having changed his throwing motion, fully developed from what he was as a junior in high school, Tyler Buchner? They would not have had Sam Hartman at quarterback, and they would have been a really scary team last season. Really scary. I mean, look, we got a glimpse of what Tyler Buchner can be in the bowl game against South Carolina. Kid threw 3 interceptions, 2 pick sixes, and they still won because he was so dynamic in that game, throwing the ball down the field as a runner. You got Audric Estime popping runs for big plays and Logan Diggs for big plays because the defense is so worried about Tyler pulling it that they weren't able to defend him. I mean, that offense, when it got rolling, that offense was scary good in that game. I mean, how many teams can play a good team, a really good SEC team that beat Tennessee, that beat Clemson late in the year, throw 2 pick sixes and still win? That's the Tyler Buchner. Like that's you want him to get more experience and limit some of those mistakes, right? Like you don't live with 3 turnovers all the time, but that's part of it. That's part of a guy making his 3rd career start who hasn't played in 3 months. But the playmaking that was there, throwing that bomb to Braden Lindsey hit him on the run as he's getting hit in the backfield is like, dude, that was some special stuff right there. Fighting Jaden Thomas on some crossers, hitting Jaden on that deep out cut. The playmaking he did as a runner, it's like once that offense got going, there was nothing South Carolina could do. Nothing. And if he doesn't throw the 3 picks, they might have hung 70 on South Carolina in that game. I mean, think about that. South Carolina did nothing to stop Notre Dame in that game. Notre Dame basically stopped themselves in that game. That was just a taste of what Tyler could have done. Imagine Tyler having 3 years of that guy developing. That would have been fun to watch. Would have been real fun to watch. And I think that if Tyler would have stayed, they would have probably turned the offense over to him at some point in time late in the year, or at least ramped up his usage a lot more as the offense started to sputter a little bit with Sam. And, who knows what we'll be looking at here this season with him at quarterback. So I know it didn't pan out and he didn't develop, but I'm not someone who goes back, well, did I miss that one? No, I didn't miss it. The talent was there. It's just missing 2 of your final 3 years of high school for an injury and then COVID. And then missing another full season as a sophomore because of an injury just stunted his development. But the talent is there. I mean, it was there. You saw that in his last game he played at Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Then the follow-up from Paul is, did Tyler Buchner have round run NFL draft upside in your opinion? No, he was never that. He was always like a really dynamic run-throw quarterback in college. I never saw that type of NFL, like high draft pick, starting quarterback in the NFL player. I saw a guy that could be a great college player. That's what I saw. But he's 6'1", he's 205, 210. He's got a good arm, not a big arm. He's more of that. His game fits great in college. I don't know how that would have translated to the NFL. And honestly, I didn't put a lot of thought into it because I don't grade high school kids based off what they're going to be in the NFL. I grade them off of what they're going to be in college, because what they do in the NFL doesn't matter to what kind of, like, does Tim Tebow being a bust, quote unquote bust in the NFL, take anything away from how great he was in college? It shouldn't. And if it does to you, then you are not looking at this correctly. That's an incorrect evaluation. Did Jadeveon Clowney never played in the NFL the way that he did early in his career at South Carolina? Does that mean he was he shouldn't have been a 5-star player? No, it has nothing. He was a great player in college. That's all that matters. Like Trent Richardson, huge bust in the NFL. He's a really good college running back. Well, he was a bust. Well, maybe for the NFL, but not for college. I think I had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. It should only matter you should be projecting players and grading players to the level that you cover. Let the NFL draft experts evaluate what they are as NFL draft prospects. And that's kind of how I see that. But no, I never saw that kind of ability from him. I thought he had a chance to be a special college quarterback. But as we've seen, not every special college quarterback projects to play in the National Football League. And Colt McCoy was a phenomenal college football player. He was always going to be a relatively average NFL player. He just didn't have the physical tools. But that doesn't take anything away from how special Colt was as a college football player. Right? Danny Warfel was a great quarterback in college. He was always going to be an average NFL quarterback. But that doesn't take away from how great he was running Steve Spurrier's offense in college. So that's kind of my stance on that one, Trevor.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I said that too, is that Tyler Buchner was going to be a guy who in college was going to be fantastic for college. But just how he played and his style of playing, I don't think would have translated well in the league. I mean, there's very few quarterbacks who are known as like traditional dual threats in college that have succeeded in the league. And one of them is like Josh Allen, who is just physically a freak of nature. Like him being able to do the things that he can do at 6'5", 235, 240 is nuts. So I view Tyler Buchner a lot of, now obviously we're not counting like off the field issues and stuff, but like the success that he could have seen in college to maybe not that translating in the league is something like a Johnny Manziel type of thing, where in college he was a great college quarterback, right? I mean, Johnny Manziel won the Heisman, he
dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gave that 2012 Alabama defense the business, but got to the league and you just can't play that style of game in the NFL. So I'm with you.
Well, and he didn't have the physical skill set. I mean, you can maybe play that style if you're a Lamar Jackson. There's those special players that can do that, but when you're 6 feet tall and you don't have a big arm and all those type of things, like anyone that ever thought Johnny Manziel, like who was it, Skip Bayless or something like that said some nonsense about that. I mean, those people, like, you don't know football. But and it's funny is, everybody talks about what Johnny did to them in 2012, and we forget Johnny threw for 464 yards and rushed for 98 yards and 5 touchdowns the next year against Bama when Bama beat him 49-42. Like, he gave Bama the business twice. Again, take the head case. That's a really good comparison in regard to taking the personality stuff away, because there couldn't be a bigger difference. And this isn't an insult to Johnny Manziel. I don't care for Johnny Manziel, but this is not meant to be a shot. It's just an observation. They have very different personalities. Tyler is a very quiet, shy, reserved, thoughtful kid that just wants to kind of go to class and hang out with his girlfriend and play football. You know what I mean? Like Johnny is I want to party. I want to flash the dollar signs. I want to get money. I want to do this. I don't want to have to do that. I want to be a star. I mean, very different personalities, but when you get them on the football field, there are definitely some similarities between the two of them. I think that's a very good comparison. Very good comparison.
Thank you.
Good one. Good one, Trevor. Good one. Very well done, my friend.
Thank you. Aiden Benami, do any of the upcoming defenses Notre Dame face pose any real threat to the offense?
Sure. I mean, look, this Notre Dame offense has certainly ascended, Trev, but I don't know that I would say that this offense has arrived to the point where I'm completely confident that they're just going to go out and shred everyone. No, I don't believe that to be the case. I mean, Army's got a really, really gritty, smart veteran defense that is giving up 11 points per game. Yes, they have not played anybody, and we're going to learn a lot more about that defense this weekend when they play North Texas. But guys, I don't care who you play. When you've held all but two of your opponents to less than 3 yards or 300 yards, I don't really care who you play. You're pretty good, you know. And should Notre Dame kind of rip them up a little bit? They should. But they're smart, they're versatile. You know, they do a lot of the things that have given Notre Dame problems for much of the year on the offensive line. Sure. And then they're going to, you know, the way that they run their offense, they're going to put a lot of pressure on you to go out there and say, hey, look, you've got to score, and you've got to score. You got to be super efficient in that game because they're going to limit possessions. You know, remember when you talked about Navy, you know, being ranking near the bottom of the country in plays per game. Well, Army's only 12 plays ahead of them, and they rank 129th in plays, where Navy ranks 130th because the game is meant to be short. Notre Dame ranks 117th in plays run. So they're going to shorten the game, which puts a lot of pressure on you. Hey, you can't afford to have turnovers and mistakes and things like that because you're not going to get enough possessions to do this unless they turn the ball over, which is what Navy did. USC's defense also poses a threat to Notre Dame. That's a well-coached defense that at times plays really good football. I really believe that. I mean, I've seen some really good growth this year from D'Anton Lynn's unit. You know, the numbers aren't going to blow you away, but look, they're giving up 22 points a game, Trev. I mean, they were giving up 34.4 last year. They've knocked off almost 2 touchdowns off that. If you look at their losses, they lost a game giving up 27 points. They lost a game giving up 24 points. They lost a game giving up 26 points, and games giving up 29 points, plus another game they gave up 33 points in overtime. There's past USC teams, Trevor, where, you know, if they'd have done that, like last year, they lost games scoring 42, 32, and 27 points. But their defense gave up 48, 34, 52, 36, and 38 in all their losses. Well, you look at 2024 and you look at the games they lost, they've only given up over 30 points one time all season. USC's record looks really good last year if they only give up 30 points, over 30 points one time all season, and it's in an overtime game. You know, so their defense has not been their problem. It's not great. This is not a vintage, hey, this looks like that Sean Cody USC defense from back in the day. It's not that. You know, looks like a Troy Polamalu defense from back in the day. It's not that. It's vastly improved. And it's got some talent, you know. So if they're on their game and they've scouted Notre Dame well, they could give Notre Dame some problems. Absolutely. No, Notre Dame's going to have to earn their keep in the final 2 games of the year. Should they struggle with Florida State and Virginia? No, guys, they shouldn't. They absolutely should not. That's why we talked about how important this game is, Trevor, to kick off the final 4 games with getting some momentum going on offense, because you don't want to be going to the Navy game scuffling in the 2 games against Florida State and Virginia. You want to go into that game rolling and having all your tools available. You know what I mean? Because you're going to need them in those final 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Any real threat, it would be the latter half of this 4-game stretch. But based on how much of a rhythm Notre Dame's offense was in, now we're going to find out a lot tomorrow to see if it's going to be one of those things where they pick up where they left off. But I find it hard to believe that there's going to be any defense left on the schedule that's just going to completely stop the offense. But I will say, if there is going to be any one of them, it will be either Army or USC. If it's Florida State's defense, it's not Florida State's defense stopping Notre Dame's offense. It's Notre Dame's offense stopping Notre Dame's offense, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Yeah. So, you know, that's how I look at the Florida State-Virginia game.
Got another one from my Iden Benami. Travis says, everyone say it with me. Roll Tide roll this weekend. LOL. That's really well done, Iden. Look, yeah, I gotta admit. I mean, look, the winner is going to be in position to be in the playoff. Selfishly, I would like to see LSU win, so there's a chance that a 10 or 11 seed LSU team has got to travel up to South Bend, Indiana in December. I would like that very much. Having said that, I also kind of like the idea of Brian Kelly being left out of the first 12-team playoff. You know what I mean? So with a veteran quarterback and a new D coordinator. So I'm a little torn on this one, Trevor. I'm a little torn on this one and what exactly I want to see happen, because I think LSU would not match up well with Notre Dame in the postseason. Assuming Notre Dame is healthy, relatively healthy, meaning like no new injuries going into the postseason. That would be a matchup I would like to see. Absolutely. But I also like it when Brian Kelly loses, because it's a sad and petty of me. I know that, but I enjoy that.
I mean, there's just some coaches that some coaches that you just enjoy when that happens. I don't think that's bad. And Brian Kelly's that guy for me too. I'll say this, Iden. I'm also Roll Tide Roll. It's also it's one of my buddy's birthdays today too. I've known him since kindergarten, and he's a big Alabama fan. His family's from Mobile, Alabama. So I'll be a Roll Tide Roll guy this weekend, not only in support of my buddy, but also I'm always down to listen to a disgruntled Brian Kelly post-game press conference and just watching him blow a gasket on the sideline. So it's a lot more enjoyable when it's not in South Bend. But I will say, if they do get the draw and they end up beating Alabama and have to play Notre Dame in South Bend, I think the price of admission would be worth listening to the stadium boo LSU as loud as humanly possible.
Oh, my gosh. And every time Brian Kelly's face is on this Jumbotron. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Don't think for a second that the playoff committee, who understands this is ultimately all about good television, if it was even close to flipping one of those two teams to make sure they played in the first round, they flat out would do that, in my opinion. They would flat out try to get an LSU, and it would be the Friday night game. It would be the Friday night game where the whole week is that game is the one that they're pitching. Oh, they would absolutely do that. There's no question that they would do that. And I would be all for it.
Oh, like I said, the price of admission would just be hearing how physically loud the stadium could boo an individual person.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me, John A1. If the offensive line gives up 3 pressures, only one off a tackle.
Off a tackle.
Right. Okay. 1 sack, no penalties against Florida State. What would that tell you about the offensive performance of the game? How does it bode for the rest of the year?
That means they probably either A, didn't throw the ball very much, which means they just destroyed Florida State on the ground, or 2, for the most part, I mean, that's a really good pressure day, like no pressure day. 1 sack, only 3 total pressures, no penalties. That means Notre Dame's offense probably played really, really well against Florida State and scored a lot of points. That's what that would probably tell me. Because if you're handling them in the pass game, then you're going to handle them in the run game. This is the way that their defense is, or their defensive line is, and they're also going to be missing. What's that kid's name? Oh, goodness gracious! Give me a second. One of their linebackers is supposed to be out. I think it's Justin. Cryer. Yeah, Justin Cryer's out. He's another one of the kids that's out in that game. He's actually a pretty decent little player. He's just another guy that's going to be out for this game. They're having their own injury issues, and they couldn't afford to lose him. So that would tell me that they played very well. And, what does it mean for the rest of the year? John, the only thing I would want to say is, was it because they were just that dominant, or did Florida State quit? Or, you know what I mean? If it's both, that's fine. If you were that dominant that you made them quit, that's fine. But if Florida State just comes out and they don't want to be there, I don't know that it tells us anything about the rest of the season for Notre Dame. It tells us that Florida State might go 1-11. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it kind of tells us. Or 2-10. I mean, I don't see how they lose to Charleston Southern, but if they do, then you almost have no choice but to fire the head coach. I mean, if they lose that game.
Yeah.
Charleston Southern's not a very good FCS team. So, but yeah, I just, if assuming Florida State doesn't quit, Trev, I think that means that the Notre Dame offensive line dominated and they are building on what they did against Navy.
Yeah, I agree. Some of it's going to be the eye test, right, John? Like you're going to have to see if their defensive line unit stays engaged throughout the game. And let me be the first one to say, and I know Brian will agree with me on this because we both spent some time this week watching Florida State play. It is very obvious when their defensive line stops putting forth the effort. So it's not something like where it could be, oh, well, were they not putting forth effort or was Notre Dame dominating them? Like they're not fast off the ball. They're not twitchy at all. They're just letting themselves get in, they're allowing themselves to be driven back 4 or 5 yards off the ball. There's no real pass rush attempt. So you'll be able to see it if it happens. So I'm with you. If they just kind of give up and act like they don't want to be there, I don't know what it'll say about the team. But again, I think the thing that's kind of working in the favor of that not happening is it's a primetime game and some of these kids want to go to the league, and this is their opportunity to get paid. So there's no better way to do that than against Notre Dame.
Yes, sir.
Super chat from AST12321. Thank you for the super chat. Oof. If Notre Dame loses 2 quarterbacks to the portal, could you see Tyler Buchner being QB2 next year, or would he be lower?
I could see that. I could certainly see that. With the understanding that Tyler knows, like, hey, you're the number 2. You're going to compete your butt off and you're going to battle to become the best number 2. But I don't know that, he'd be in a competition to be the starter per se. But I'd be okay with that. Because I think a lot of the pressure's off Tyler now. I mean, there'd be no pressure on him anymore. Just, hey, man, just go play ball. Go have fun. And I don't know that Tyler was having fun playing football anymore. I don't. And that'd be a great comeback story. I'd be all about that. And then, you'd probably have number 2, and then hopefully, Blake Hebert or maybe an Anthony Rizak eventually develops and that kind of thing. But no, I'd be okay with that. Because again, the thing about Tyler is, even if he never gets back to his old glory potential, he's still a guy you can bring off the bench and he can make plays and he can be a run throw guy and he's going to be in great shape because he's going to be playing lacrosse and, he's a guy that can help you out, and your quarterback goes down. You need somebody to get you off the bench. Well, what better than to put in a really athletic kid that can run around and make plays and still throw the football? And so, yeah, I honestly, I'd be okay with that. I really would. I really would be okay with that. So let's just say, because you have 3 returners next year, 2 of them transfer. So the guy that stays, let's just say it's either Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr. You'd have Anthony Rizak coming back. You'd have Blake Hebert coming back. And then you move Tyler Buchner there. That means you don't have to go to the portal for another quarterback. You still might, but, because I don't believe that they're going to bring in even in that scenario, a veteran quarterback to compete for the job. Because I think what would have happened is 2 guys would have entered the portal after the spring, assuming that portal window's still open.
Yeah. Super chat from Rob Osgood. Thank you, Rob. Great show yesterday. I don't believe in the statement, you win and you're in. I like dominate and you're in better. Y'all are awesome. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that.
You're awesome.
Yeah, you are too, buddy. Rob is another one of the OGs. Look, for Notre Dame, I don't think that this is a scenario where they're in and winning they're in if it's 3 ugly wins. I think there needs to be some level of quality play by Notre Dame to get in, especially if like Bama runs the table or, something like that. They're SMU 11-1 SMU plays 12-0 Miami, and they both play to a dogfight, a great 4-quarter game. That SMU team or Miami, whoever loses, will have a shot to get in. So you've got to play well to some degree, but Rob, it's also what I like about what you're saying. It's a mindset, right? Like when we say those things, this is more of us as analysts talking about the realities of Notre Dame's current circumstances in the playoff, or, like another team's current circumstances in the playoff. You know what I mean? You don't say that to them as players and coaches. You don't say that to each other. Your goal is to be the best you can be and to dominate essentially. Right. So, that's the reality. So if we ever say, hey, win and you're in, it's not a statement of, hey, I'm okay with whatever performance they have because they're going to be in. It's more of speaking of a reality of what's the playoff outlook look like. You know what I mean? So what I would say, Rob, is I tend to like your comment if it in certain contexts, in certain, hey guys, listen, fellas, I'm the head coach. All we got to do today is win, and we're in. We're good. That's a terrible thing for a coach to say, because it's, hey, what got us here is that it's not about winning and losing. It's about us achieving our best potential as a team, and the winning and losing takes care of itself. Well, I should say the winning takes care of itself. It's about not changing who you are. You don't put that pressure of, hey, we just got to win this game. You haven't talked about winning all year. Why change now? You just told me there's something different about this game. But for us as analysts talking about the realities of, okay, if Miami wins this game, they're in the ACC title game. It doesn't matter if it's by a point or by 50. They win and they're in. That's more of a reality of a bracket, a schedule, you know what I mean? So it just depends on the context, Rob. That would be my thing. So, but I think overall your point, if you're talking about what type of performance we're accepting when evaluating the performance, don't like hey, they won, they're in, right? I don't feel that way. But there's also a reason why survive and advance is a thing. We've seen this in the NCAA tournament basketball where teams may win ugly, but they keep winning and they keep moving forward. So there is something to that, but that's not a stated goal of your football team. Your football team is to go out there and be the very best version of ourselves, and the rest will take care of itself. But as analysts, there's merit to the whole, hey guys, just keep winning. Like if Notre Dame gets into the college football playoff and they win their first round game by a last-second field goal, and they win their second game by a point where they block a field goal at the end of the game, they win the semifinal game by 2 points in a 12-10 game, and they have a walk-off field goal in their championship game, are we going to be like, well, they barely won all 4 games? No, we're going to be freaking celebrating a championship, right? So there is some of that. So, but it's just about becoming the best version of yourselves and then letting the chips fall where they may when you're talking to your team. For us, it's a little bit of a different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a coach, you sit down and you talk to your team about how winning is just a byproduct of how you prepare and how you perform out on the field. It's not so much the coaches in the locker room and they're telling their team, guys, we have to win today, right? Like, so I agree with you. I think about that all the time. Is when Notre Dame makes the playoffs, the discussion goes away of you have to look amazing when you win. You have to do that. You have to put up X amount of points. The win margin has to look like this. They could win every single game 2-0. As long that is when, and still coaches will not succumb to, guys, we just have to win. But like the reality is, once you make the big dance, literally just win. Win by any means necessary, and you are on to the next round. And I can't wait till that's the discussion. Not, it's nice that they have the ability to go out on Saturday and win by like 35, but it'll be nice when we can just say, if they win 42-7, awesome. If they win 10-7, awesome. As long as it's a win and they keep on moving, I'm with you. Super chat from Remington Geens. Thank you, Remington. Jeans, sorry.
I believe it actually is jeans.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat, Remington. If Notre Dame was to go 11-1 regardless this season, was it better to lose to a small school early or a better school late?
First of all, Remington, I will be contacting you next week. I did get your message. It's just been kind of a crazy couple weeks, so I will respond to you here early next week. So, and if I don't respond to you, feel free to shoot me another text message this weekend, so I'm reminded of that. But I do have you on my docket of reaching out to you next week. To answer your question, in this scenario, I think it's much better to lose early in this scenario, because the way the committee works is not that they ignore losses, but they tend to kind of put less weight on early season losses, especially if you've played at a high level since then. We have seen teams lose late and get in. Alabama one year lost in the last game of the season and still got in. Clemson one year lost in November to Pitt and got in. Bama lost to Auburn. You remember that year they lost to Auburn and still got in the play. I think it was the 2017 season, actually, when they won the national championship, I believe. But that's the thing is Trevor. And then the other part of it, look after that's the resume part of it. But once you get past the resume part of it, I look at it from the standpoint of it was 2017, the year they won the national title. They lost to Auburn in the last game of the year, 26-14. But the other part of it too is I like the momentum of, hey, we're winners of 8, 9, 10, 11 games in a row, whatever that may be, heading to the playoff. You're a hot football team. You understand what it's like to win. You understand what it's like to go out there and compete and say, hey, look, we are rolling. Where if you lose a game late to a good team, maybe some doubt creeps in your head about who you are. And then if your schedule, like this year, I've had this debate with a friend and other people like that. There's this notion amongst some Notre Dame fans, Notre Dame's schedule's weak. And I'm like, I just think that's nonsense. It's not a weak schedule. They played at Texas A&M. They play at USC. I don't care what USC's record. It's at USC. They play a really good Louisville team. They play a quality Georgia Tech team. They've played good upon Navy's really good this year. Army's really good this year for that level. Those are 2 group of 5 conference champion contending teams. And even the MAC teams they played are quality, not great, but quality MAC teams. I mean, I just watched Northern Illinois on Wednesday, kind of take it to Western Michigan a little bit, who was 5-3. They're 5-4. Miami's got a winning record now. After starting the season off 0-3 against 3 Power 4 teams. So, it's a challenging, it's not a gauntlet. It's not 2017. It's kind of like it's either 2017 or it sucks. I'm like, this is a way tougher schedule than what 2021 was. I'd argue it's a tougher schedule than what 2019 was, because that Georgia team was very comparable to what Texas A&M is this year. And so I think that Michigan team was inferior to what this year's version of Louisville is, that 2019 Michigan team that lost, I think, 5 games that year. I think that this Louisville team's better than what that Michigan team was. Then your only ranked win that year was over Navy in 2019. 2021 was a real soft schedule. This schedule isn't that. It's also not anywhere close to what Bama has to face this year or what Florida had to face this year, right? Like it's a quality schedule that has some challenges on it, but one that if you're Notre Dame, you should be able to handle. But I can also admit that although I think you're wrong to say it's a weak schedule, I do think you are correct in saying, is it better for Notre Dame to have lost to an inferior team and then pile up the good wins? Because if you'd have lost to A&M or Louisville, like here's the thing. People say, well, Notre Dame got dinged because they lost to Northern Illinois. I would argue Notre Dame might be ranked lower if they lost to Texas A&M and beat Northern Illinois, because now the question would be, who'd you beat? Your only win is over a 3-loss Louisville team? Who'd you beat? Yeah, Bama has 2 losses, but look at who they've beat. So in this instance, I think it's worked out well for Notre Dame, the timing of it and the fact, because there aren't a lot of, wow, look at how good Notre Dame is. There's a couple, but some of those are just now being recognized. I think people are just now starting to recognize, boy, Louisville's played a gauntlet of a schedule. They had to play Notre Dame on the road. They had to play Miami. They had to play SMU. They had to play Georgia Tech. They had to play at Clemson. Like now they got to play at Pitt. Like that's a tough schedule. You know what I mean? And Notre Dame outplayed them, I think, more convincingly than anybody else did, because Notre Dame never trailed after the first possession of the game, and was never tied after the Notre Dame's second possession of the game, where I believe they were tied with both Miami and SMU in the fourth quarter of those games. And so I think that's why I do believe that earlier season loss, the timing of it being early, like a previous question, I think it was the last question, or one of the last questions was about, or actually it was this one, where lose to a smaller school and lose early. Because if they'd have lost to Northern Illinois in November, that would get looked at way different than earlier, because now it's like, look, yeah, it was a rough game. They were having to let down after the A&M game. And it was new year, new coordinator, new quarterback, blah, 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 blah. But look what they've done since. All of a sudden, let's say you'd beat A&M and gone on a roll, and let's say they lose to Army in 2 weeks, devastating. Even though Army's a much better team than Northern, devastating for Notre Dame. So, yeah, that was that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the playoff committee does the best job of the 3 major polls, right, between the AP coaches and the college football playoff committee. They do the best job at not factoring in recency bias as much, but recency bias still plays a factor in every decision, like at some level. And so for that reason alone is why I firmly believe that losing early is definitely better, because on one hand you can say, especially if Notre Dame runs the table, on one hand you can look at it and say, yes, they lost to Northern Illinois. That loss is going to stick with Notre Dame until they win at least one playoff game, right? But up until the playoffs, they've won 10 straight games, beating multiple ranked opponents, and the games were not close, right? Whereas if you drop a game in November, like that's, that would be tough, right? Like I will say, I don't know if it would have dropped Notre Dame out of the playoffs per se, because if they are undefeated and they are, call it, 10-0 going into in this hypothetical situation, they are 10-0 going into the Army game. They're probably the number 2 team in the country. Pending that Army is still ranked, Notre Dame loses a game to Army like 16-14, like they did against Northern Illinois. I do think they go from being like the second ranked team in the college football playoff to like 11 through 12.
Yeah. They dropped way down.
Yeah, if not on the outside looking in at like 13th. But no, I say all that to say I would definitely rather lose early than late.
Great question, Remington.
Yeah, that was good. Super chat from Irish for Life 99. Thank you for the super chat. Happy Football Friday, Irish Breakdown. Over under. Will Tyler Buchner ever score another touchdown at Notre Dame, like a trick play or a fake field goal? I think he has another year of eligibility.
He does. Because 21, 22, 23, and 24, right? So he took a red shirt in 2022, the year he started at quarterback. He only played 2 games in regular season. So he had a medical red shirt that season. So he'll have 2025 as well. But I'll take the over. I'm trying to put myself in a better mood today, Trevor. So I'll take the over. I'm going to hope, kind of like a hope over pick here. I like Tyler. I said at the time I thought he made a wrong decision, not necessarily to leave Notre Dame, although I didn't think he should have left Notre Dame. But, I thought it would have been beneficial for him to take a year to just kind of learn and be developed and just kind of get back to, being a quarterback without all the pressure that he had on his shoulders. I think it would have been great for him to learn under a guy like Sam Hartman, who could have helped him develop as a thrower and reading defense. Sam would have been a great mentor for Tyler. And then when he did leave, it was like, but not Bama. It never made sense for him to follow Tommy to Bama. He didn't fit what Nick Saban wanted. He was not going to beat out guys who were already there, and then Nick Saban threw him to the wolves as sort of a sacrificial lamb against South Florida. And he, that was it. So, I would have loved to, I'm watching the kid Ashton Daniels at Stanford running Troy Taylor's offense, thinking Tyler Buchner would light it. He's a way better passer than Ashton Daniels. And he's every bit as dynamic athletically. I would argue more so. Like, that'd have been a great fit for Tyler to go run that offense. But he made the choice he made, and and he's got to live with the consequences. And I'm from everything I've heard, Tyler's just happy again. He's happy to be a college student, happy to just be part of the team. And I would love to see him find some success in some capacity, even if it's a fake field goal, if it's, let's say next year CJ Carr's a starting quarterback and they want to have, and Tyler just has a great offseason. He's a great teammate. He's peak physical condition, and they want to do some sort of like goal line wildcat type package with him. That's part of their goal line package. Cool. So, all right, so here's what we're going to do in the goal line. We're going to put Tyler in the quarterback. We're going to put 3 tight ends in the game. We're going to put Keidron Young on one side, Jeremiah Love on the other side, and say, stop this. All right. Good luck. You know what I'm saying? Like, so sure.
Yeah. I mean,
and you just started, you've got the visual of Keidron on one side, Jeremiah on another, the 3 big tight ends, and Jagasaw, Shrouth, Gerby, just all those guys, and you're just like, yeah, I'll take that. That'll play. Good luck with that. He can throw. He can run. He can hand off to Jeremiah. He can hand off to Kedron. He can ride Kedron. You have to dive on that, and then he pulls, and they're running a speed option around the edge with Jeremiah. Good luck stopping that, buddy.
That's what I'm saying. And he can still throw. All it's going to take is one play action and sneak a tight end out into the flat. And it's just, I mean, that's not even.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
Good Lord. I mean,
see that.
I will say, in pertains to the super chat, man, I wholeheartely believe that he'll score a touchdown. Like, I could see it being something if they don't do this really awesome goal line package that you just schemed up, which would be fantastic to see. The coaching staff is very high on Tyler Buchner in the fact that he's coming back. He is a pure team player. He does the things that everybody asks him to do. And I think to pay a little homage, I could see something like on a senior day next year, letting him line up at quarterback in a goal line situation and scoring one final touchdown in South Bend. Something is like a tip of the cap, a sign of respect of like, hey, man, we're going to give you your moment in the sun here because you've done so much for this program the last, call it 2 years between this year and next. So, I could see that. That'd be really cool. That would be really, really cool. Aiden Benami. 1 loss Notre Dame compared to 1 loss IU to Ohio State, 1 loss Penn State to Ohio State, and 2 loss Ohio State, 2nd loss in the championship game. So presumably both losses to Oregon. Who's higher ranked?
Ohio State would be. Ohio State would be.
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, they're not going to rank those 2 teams who played softer schedules who Ohio State beat ahead of them. Like, if Ohio State's the number 2, like let's say the rankings stay the same. Oregon wins out, they stay number 1. If Ohio State wins out and beats Indiana, they're only going to solidify their spot as number 2. There's no way if they lose to the number 1 team twice in 2 close games, one will be the championship game, that they're going to drop them below a team that beat them at the other team's place a month ago, who has no good wins. I mean, they may do it because they're obsessed with Penn State and hyping up Penn State. But I just, yeah.
Yeah. What I think it should be is in this scenario, Aiden, what I think it should be is in terms of like highest ranked to the least highest ranked, I think it should go Ohio State, then Notre Dame, then probably Penn State, then IU. But what I think it's going to happen in this scenario, like what the committee will do because they love Penn State for reasons that I still can't figure out. I think it goes Ohio State, then Penn State, then Notre Dame, then IU. And it's not that I'm disrespecting IU. What they've done this year has been fantastic. But I will say it depends on how they lose to Ohio State. But if you're going to play 0 ranked teams all year and then the 1 ranked team you play blows you out, that's just – it's going to put the committee in a tough spot to say, okay, so now we're going to put you in the playoffs where the only teams you're going to play are ranked. And we just hope that the result isn't what happened against Ohio State, And I agree you could have that same argument with Penn State. But, I mean, like I said, for whatever reason, Penn State is the golden child.
Should be ranked lower than Indiana right now.
Yeah. Yes.
If they lose to Ohio State in a close game, they should still be ranked ahead of Penn State because you say, well, they haven't beat anybody. Neither's Penn State. And the games that they've won have been far more convincing than anything. Penn State failed to score over 30 points. How many times this year? Barely beat Bowling Green. Are we still riding high off their home win over West Virginia, who's 4-4? And really? That's what we're hanging our hat on? Your resume's built around beating Illinois 21-7? Really? So, yeah, it's I just don't get that. But if Indiana is behind Penn State now, so they have no chance of being ahead of Penn State if they lose to Ohio State, even if it's by a point. It's just ridiculous.
Also,
that's not me debating what will happen. Or should happen. That's me debating how silly what I think will happen is.
I agree.
That's how I look at it.
It's also a tough look for that West Virginia head coach when they college football released a poll or a list of the top 100 players, and he freaked out and made a huge scene that none of his guys were on it, and now West Virginia's not having a good year.
No,
that's
control the controls, man. You know what I'm saying? But I swear that the college football playoff committee every year is like the Flavor Flav to Penn State's Chuck D. they're just hype man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you may not be dropping records like you used to, but we're just going to hype you up. You know what I mean? Like, it just everybody needs a hype man, in their lives, like what the committee is for Penn State. Everybody needs that kind of undying, loyal support, no matter how much it's needed. Like the committee is like Penn State's that husband that just constantly cheats on his wife, and she just loves him anyway, and he treats her bad, and he doesn't make good money, and he's just out there, and he's just a total scumbag, and she still loves him no matter what. She still defends him no matter what, and like that's the playoff Penn State relationship. It's so unhealthy, and it makes no sense. None.
I want to sit down and talk to somebody, and because I know, like, I know they wouldn't sway my decision, but just so I can see the perspective from a seat that's not mine.
Right.
Because I legit, like, how I dissect and how I evaluate teams and strength of schedule and margin of victory and eye test and all this other stuff. I want to know what it is. Like, I want to know from that person's perspective who is high on Penn State. I want to know what it is just so I can ask them all of those questions.
Yeah. I see things like where Penn State's got this really good strength of record, and somebody told me, I'm actually going to go look now. Somebody told me that they have a really good strength of schedule ranking, and I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand how you can count their resume as tough. Like, I'm actually looking now. They have the number 28 strength of schedule, where Notre Dame's the 73rd, and I'm thinking, how in the hell is that possible? Ohio State's better than Texas A&M, all right, by a little bit, but there's nobody on their schedule that they've played that's as good as Louisville. The number 3 team on their schedule is not as good as Navy. It's because of the SEC. This is why I say I don't put as much onto the strength of schedule anymore, because it so overrates the Big Ten and the SEC. And their own rankings show that, because they have 4 Big Ten teams in the top 10 and nobody else in the top 25, where ACC has 5 teams in the top 25. I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. And they are a very average football team. Very, very average football team. And I mean, but like, yeah, like their game control is 20th. That's not good. That's not good at all. Like they're an ugly team. They're a very ugly. They're winning. They're a team with a very ugly ability to win against teams that aren't good. Whereas look at a team like Notre Dame, yeah, they have a worse loss, but they are dominating all the other teams that they've played. And they have 3 wins better than anything Penn State has as number 1. The only thing Penn State has on Notre Dame is a better loss, which I always thought who you beat mattered more than who you lost to. Be one thing if like Notre Dame had a better loss and they only had 1 better win than Penn State, then you could argue like Penn State had 3 good wins, but Notre Dame's 1 win was better than their top 3, but their second and third and fourth wins were better than Notre Dame's second, third, or fourth wins. But that's not true. They have the better loss. Notre Dame has a significantly better number 1 win, because it's comparing Texas A&M to Illinois, right? You look at Notre Dame's number 2 win. Their second best win is over Louisville. Penn State's second best win is over Wisconsin, who's 5-4 and just got annihilated by Iowa. And that would make their third best win would be over 4-5 USC, compared to Notre Dame, who has a win over 6-2 Navy team. Like, I would argue that Georgia Tech win is better than Penn State's number 2 win over Wisconsin. I would take Georgia Tech over Wisconsin on a neutral field right now, because that's what I was all, who would you pick to win on a neutral field? If Haynes King plays, or even heck without Haynes King, I would take Georgia Tech on a neutral field over Wisconsin. That's their second best win. That's Notre Dame's 4th best win. So the whole thing is just, to me, I just don't get it.
Super chat from Wade Garrett. Thank you, Wade. How much has your expectations changed since Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois, in what you consider a successful season would be?
In what you consider a successful season to be. So that would mean, okay, so like honestly, Wade, my expectations have not changed. The only thing that changed at that time was whether or not I thought Notre Dame could live up to the expectations. So like what is considered a successful season to me is the exact same thing that I had considered as a successful season before the season started. Now you say, okay, but haven't you factored in all the injuries? I have, because you have to factor in the external context, just like you have to factor in the internal context. So part of my 11 wins, get to the playoff, win at least a game, depending on your draw, 2. Well, that was the thought process. They're going to play a really good A&M team, which they did, a really good Louisville team, which they did, a really good Florida State team, which they won't, and a really good USC team, which they won't. Like that was our expectation of what Notre Dame is going to face this year. 2 of the best teams they're going to play, and the 2 in November are just not good football teams. They're combined 5-13 right now, Florida State and USC. 5-13. Neither of them have winning records. So, yeah, the expectation I predicted before the season, 11-1. What I said at the time, Trevor, I don't know who they're going to lose to, because it's going to be somebody that they just don't show up that day. That's what it was going to be. And we saw that. So 11-1. Absolutely. And so you talk about, well, but they've got the injuries. Guys, you got to stop creating excuses, because Notre Dame with the injuries, you still have to say, okay, how do they stack up against who other teams currently are? And there's still a lot of other teams who currently are not as good as Notre Dame, even with the injuries. You have to take that into context and not use those excuses. Yes. Like you say, well, their ceiling has changed. Somebody said ceiling has changed because of the injuries. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. It's always been about the matchups. Because if your ceiling before the season was they should do this, I'm like, well, has Georgia lived up to your preseason expectations? Has Ohio State lived up to your preseason expectations? Has Alabama lived up to preseason expectations? Has Texas lived up to preseason expectations? Who has lived up to preseason expectations outside of Oregon? So, yes, Notre Dame is down below what their preseason expectations are because of the injuries, but so are other teams who've had their own issues with injuries or guys getting kicked off the team or whatever the case may be. So you can't evaluate changing the ceiling without taking into context the rest of college football, because a lot of teams aren't as good as people thought they were going to be coming in the season. And a lot of Notre Dame's injuries were early enough where they've had 2 whole months to prepare how to win without those players. The only really recent injury is the one to Benjamin Morrison. The rest of them all happened within the first 3 weeks of the season, right? And they're being replaced by really good players. That sucks that they lost Boubacar Touré and Jordan Patojo. They're turning to Josh Burnham. It's a top 100 recruit, not on just my board, but on other people as well. You know, that they lost Benjamin Morrison. That sucks. They replaced him with a guy who's 6'2", and fast, who knows how to play football. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you lose Jason Onye, and what happens? You get Gabriel Rubio back, who's better than Jason Onye. I mean, it's like, guys, they're okay. You know, the offensive line thing sucks, but okay, you lose Ashton Craig. You replace him with a guy that started 13 games last year. And so, you know, it's my ceiling has not changed for this football team. Because with the exception of the ceiling has also changed for a lot of other teams. My Ohio State ceiling has changed. My Texas ceiling has changed. My Georgia ceiling has changed. And so Notre Dame's is changing along with theirs, which means the ceiling has not changed. Do you get what I'm saying? So if everybody's ceiling is coming down at a similar rate, then the ceiling is still the ceiling relative to the final expectations. Depending on the draw, this has a chance to be a Final Four team, which was exactly what it was before the season. And if they catch the right breaks and they stay healthy, they've got a shot to win it all. It's unlikely at this point in time, and I don't know what the draw is going to be. And I think that part, maybe you could say, okay, maybe that part's changed. Can they win 4 with all these injuries? That's fair. But I think that was always a bit of a, can they do that? With, you know, so my expectations haven't changed, Wade. I would say the margin for error of getting to those expectations has narrowed greatly because of the injuries. That's what I would say. I don't think the ceiling has changed. I think it's more difficult to achieve. That might be the best way of saying it for me, Trevor. The ceiling has not changed. It's just going to be tougher to get to that ceiling. Is that fair? Because then that says, hey, look, yes, you have to take the injuries into account, but it doesn't change the ceiling. It just might even be more challenging to get there, and you appreciate getting there a little bit more than maybe before the season.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Absolutely. Wade, I'm going to answer this question a little differently because I'm going to answer it from what my expectations were post Northern Illinois loss to today. In that my expectations for this team now are significantly higher than what they were after Northern Illinois. I mean, like it's after Northern Illinois, the conversation for me was, especially because thinking around that time too, like Alabama still hadn't lost to Vanderbilt, right? And Georgia had just gotten done, blowing out Clemson, and they looked like they were rolling, and Ohio State was rolling because they hadn't played anybody yet. And so after that, I was just like, I mean, if Notre Dame can sneak in at 12 or 11, maybe we'll see. And now, based on how they've played and what the rest of the landscape of college football has done, now I'm going to be disappointed if Notre Dame doesn't win at least one playoff game, if not two. Right? So I will say my expectations have changed post that day. Like on September 7th, when Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, to today, November 8th, my expectations have changed. Right? Because there was a lot that I still needed to see from this football team. Because it was one thing to say, well, maybe they were just having an off day. Like the team looked bad. The game looked bad. And even for a couple weeks after that, it was still kind of like, okay, well, they beat Purdue by 59. Fantastic. They still couldn't pass the ball. You know what I mean? And Purdue is not good, right? And then it's like, okay, well, now you have Miami of Ohio again. Yeah, you won by 25. You won 28-3. It didn't look great, but each week, really since the Miami of Ohio game, Notre Dame has taken multiple strides. Their defense has stayed consistent. So this is more offensively. But on the offensive side of the ball, they've started to take monumental strides week over week to put me back in the position of saying, similar to now kind of tying it into what Brian was saying, at the beginning of the season, my expectation was they're going to make the playoff and win multiple games in the playoffs. However, that was not my mindset after they lost to Northern Illinois. And now I'm, based on what I've seen and what the product on the field is, now I am back to, based on what's happening in the rest of college football and how much Notre Dame has progressed, we're going to have to continue to see that over this next stretch of 4 games. But I like their chances again to make the playoffs and then win multiple playoff games. So all in all, Brian and I kind of got to the same ending point, just had a little bit of a different way to get there. But yeah, I mean, for me, the expectation, a successful season would be multiple playoff wins.
The data on the ground, so to speak, always has to be willing to change your opinion of things. And Trevor, I would have argued even after Louisville, I did not think this team could achieve the expectations that I had set for them before the season and the standard that I held them to. Not that I'd lowered the standard, my expectation of their ability to live up to that standard have changed. And it really comes down to what you and I said going into the last break. This next 3-game stretch is going to tell us everything we need to know about this football team, right? As well, in regard to their potential to finish really strong. And they looked like a really good football team. Even when they didn't play well, like the Georgia Tech game, they still kind of dominated that game. You never really felt like Georgia Tech had a chance to win the game. It's a decent team, and then you fast forward here now going into this break, and it's like, okay, we know this is a really good football team. Now the question is, how good can they be? And that's what we're going to learn now. If they struggle the next 4 games, drop another game, then obviously that changes things. But I can only evaluate on what we have seen. And what we have seen is this team looks nothing like the team that we saw the first Saturday of September. Nothing like it. The defensive line was playing bad. The linebackers were clueless half the time on what to do. The quarterback did not look at all comfortable in the offense. He was hurt, so he couldn't run the ball. Your offensive line struggled to build on what they did in the opener. Your receiving core just was not playing. I mean, they're a way different team now than they were then. You know, and that sometimes and I understand why some fans don't want to buy in, but it's like you have to allow the passage of time and what your eyes have shown you to change. So like if you were going to look at USC in November of 2016 and still talk to me about the Bama loss or the Stanford loss, or the Utah loss, I'm like, that's fine. You can talk about that. It's still the same team, but it's not the same team, right? Like it's still USC. It still reflects on their record. It should still impact their ranking. But if the team from November played Bama at the beginning of the season, that's a much different football game. Maybe Bama still beats them. Maybe not. They certainly beat Utah and Stanford. No doubt about it. They made a quarterback change. They did some other. That was a different team. The Ohio State team in November of 2014, if you could transplant that team back to September, they beat the crap out of Virginia Tech. They evolved as a team. And sometimes it's not that you evolved, you just had a crappy day. For Notre Dame, it's a little bit of both. They had a crappy day and they've evolved as a team for a host of reasons. And now they just have to keep building on it. So, you can keep holding on to the Northern Illinois game, and to a degree you should, and the team should, but you don't get past it because that's part of who you are. You know what I mean, Trevor? It's like, the decisions we make in life, we may learn from them and grow from them, but they don't disappear. They're still part of who we are. You know what I mean? Like someone who serves time in jail and comes out and they turn their life around and they become this amazing person that does such wonderful work for the community, and they've bettered themselves, because it doesn't mean that we pretend like they never went to jail. That's a part of their story. Embracing the fact that they spent time in jail adds more power to the impact they're making in their community now. You don't gloss over, pretend like it didn't happen, right? And that's kind of, you look at it, but you also say, but you can't keep acting like this is the same person that committed the crime that got him in jail, but it's not the same person. They were changed. They were moved, that whatever the case may be, whether it was, a newfound faith or turning back to their faith or whatever the case may be, they are the same person in body, but they're not the same person, right? And that applies to football teams. Some teams are just they had a bad day, and this is still, or they had a great day. And, like Northern Illinois had a great day. They have not looked like that team the rest of the year. They had a great day. Notre Dame had a bad day, but they've also evolved as a team, and they're a much different team now. It's a little bit of both. Whereas like Texas against Georgia, I think they had a bad night. I don't think Texas has changed at all since then or before then. I just think they had a bad night, which is why I think if they play again, I think Texas wins. Not because they've evolved as a football team. I think they play like crap. And Georgia played by far the best game they've played all year. It happens. Right? I mean, if Michigan would have played App State 2 months after they lost to App State in September, they'd smoked App State. But it doesn't take away that they lost App State. I just had to get that in there. A little dig at
I appreciated that. Michigan. I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But
that was good.
Right, let's get to some more.
John A1, if a Notre Dame wide receiver had a 100-yard game on Saturday, who would you want that player to be? Which guy's 100-yard game would have the most impact for the offense and the pass game threat going forward?
I think it's one of two people, Trevor, and I'm very curious to who. You know what? I'm going to let you answer this first because I always answer first, and then you're like, man, I was going to say that too. And I always steal your thunder. So how about you answer this question first, and we'll see if you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, my guy's going to be Chris Mitchell. Man, he's the one guy that I will say, like, we've seen very small glimpses of him this season, and it's been him doing things that he was not known for when he was at Florida International. Is that where he was at? So it's different, right? Like, one, to answer the first part of this, John, who would I want it to be? Chris Mitchell. In his player press conference this week, he was like, I dreamed of going to Florida State. They overlooked me, and now Saturday's my time to show them what they missed out on. I like stuff like that. Like we talked about how emotional football is, and that's what I love, man. Like I love those kinds of stories. But for Notre Dame moving forward, that now shows like, hey, this is why you brought Chris Mitchell to South Bend. to stretch the field vertically, to have a downfield passing threat, not a, hey, we hit Jaden Greathouse on that 40-yard pass that one time. Remember, we have a downfield passing game. Hey, we hit Bo Collins on that 138-yard touchdown pass that one time, that one game. Remember, we can push it downfield. But if you get a guy like Chris Mitchell going, and now that is a legitimate threat week in and week out, one that softens the box, Notre Dame can run the ball more efficiently, and it just adds that next level of your offense becoming more dynamic. So for me, my clear-cut guy is Chris Mitchell.
Okay. Who would number 2 be in your mind? I want to see if you're 1 for 1 so far. Chris Mitchell is going to be one of mine because of the impact he can make, not just in this game, but it's kind of like, you remember when Chris Olave, I think it was what year was it that Chris Olave started to ball out, but like completely changed that Ohio State receiving core. It was like, was it 1920? I forget what year it was, but he was a freshman. He didn't do anything. And then like late in the year, he just kind of pops up and all of a sudden, like, wow, you got a newfound weapon. I think of when Kevin Stefferson reemerged into the offense in 2017 for Notre Dame, right? Is if Chris Mitchell, if I don't care if it's 8 games late, 9 games late, but if the last 4 games he is playing like the guy he was at Florida International, completely changes his football team. Completely.
Yeah.
Who do you think my number 2 guy is? Who would your number 2 guy be? If you could say, I'm going to cheat. I'm cheating a little bit on this. I know he said wide receiver.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, do we have to stick with wide receivers? Because if not, it's going to be Mitchell Evans.
Pass catcher. There you go.
Yeah, mine's going to be Mitchell Evans. Like I was going to ask if we could, because if it had to be another wide receiver, I would say Jaden Greathouse. But like,
correct, agree. Or Jordan Faze. I mean, it's KK Smith might be the other one. If it's not Chris Mitchell, then let KK Smith be that guy.
Totally. Right. Or Cam Williams. Like literally anybody that can push the field vertically. Like I don't care. Like
exactly.
But if we're just going to go pass catcher here, it's Mitchell Evans. You talked earlier in the week about what if you can get him going, and if Mike Denbrock can find a way to get Mitchell Evans going and get him back to his true form of what he did in that 4 or 5 game stretch last year, this offense becomes completely different.
Insane.
Because we just got done talking about, what Chris Mitchell can do to help out the other receivers in the offense. I mean, Mitchell Evans opens up the entire, over the middle becomes wide open. You send Mitchell Evans on a deep end, and then you run Greathouse or Faison underneath him. You have Evans running a deep in, and then, like let's say you go, deuce left, you have Mitchell Evans run a post, and then Chris Mitchell, or you have Mitchell Evans run a deep in like the slot, and you have Chris Mitchell run a deep post over top and make that safety pick one or the other. Like it's just, you start to think about what all this offense can do. And right now for Mitchell Evans, he's a guy where it's like, yes, he's had that potential. He has yet to do it this year. And we're getting farther and farther and farther away from the knee injury. And we're getting farther and farther and farther away from that 5 game stretch. So we all know that he has the ability to go out and do it. He is now about a year removed. Actually, I think very close to almost a year to date of when he tore his ACL. So now it's just got to be, if he can go out and get a 100-yard game and have one of those vintage Mitchell Evans, like, what he did against Duke, or what he did against USC or Ohio State, just something along those lines. That's just going to open up so much more. I mean, it's going to be crazy.
This offense with Mitchell Evans playing like Mitchell Evans becomes really hard. It's almost like you're adding a new player in the end of the season. I mean, that's almost what it would be like. It'd be fun.
Well, I mean, this offense is close to getting to the point where, like, on paper, since they've been gelling the last couple weeks, there's facets of this offense that's already like, how do you stop this? Like, the consistent has been the run game. Like, how do you stop the run game? I mean, what, you target 4, 24 has
with 13.
Right. That's right. And now you're starting to, okay, Bo Collins is there consistent. Well, now you have Jaden Greathouse, who's had, a couple of spurts in there. You have Chris Mitchell, who's starting to come on and underneath routes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Like I think Jaden only caught like 1 or 2 passes against Georgia Tech, but one of them was a down the field shot. I think he only caught 1 pass against Navy, but it was a
for
42 yard bomb that set up your first touchdown. Right. Jordan Faison's back in the lineup and
I was just
making
about
plays.
to say,
yeah.
Jordan Faison.
I can't have all the great quote. I got to get something in there, Trav. You know what I'm saying? You'll make me look bad if you're coming up with all the good stuff. I got to get some stuff in there. You know what I mean?
No, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. This is Irish Breakdown by Brian Driscoll. That's fair.
I'm just kidding, man. I love it when you give great stuff. It's awesome. But yeah, and then you add Mitchell, to your point, Trav, before I interrupted you, you throw Mitchell Evans into that conversation. Mitchell Evans playing like Mitchell Evans is what we mean to say. You know, focus, playing faster, being more productive, playing with confidence, building that relationship with Riley Leonard. That'd be a lot of fun. Like if we get vintage Jordan Faison in the final month, vintage Mitchell Evans in the final month, if that's all you get, that's huge. But if you then throw in Chris Mitchell being a big play threat, yes. Remember that ceiling we were talking about earlier? But that's what we need to see, though, honestly. I mean, yeah, it sounds great. We talk about, but we need to see at least 1 or 2 of those guys really kind of raise their game up in this final stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Muhammad Abdi, Brian, is there truth to what Urban Meyer said about Notre Dame administration obligated to the Subway alumni to play in different regions and have challenging schedules, example, next year and 26 schedules?
Well, no, I mean, it's not like there's some relationship where like he signed some pact with Subway alum, because there's no like one group of Subway alum that they have to bow to. But it's not so much that as it's just being true to who you are. It's being true to who Notre Dame is, which has always been, we're going to play anybody, anywhere, and we're a national program. And you can't be a national program if you don't play nationally. If all you're doing is playing Midwestern games with the occasional shot out to California to play a California team, or if all you're playing is East Coast games, the occasional West Coast trip to California at the end of the year, then are you really a national program, or are you a East Coast team that basically plays 1 game a year on the West Coast? To be a national program, you got to play all over the country. That's part of the deal, right? That's part of but that's a lot of flying. They used to do that by train and win national championships, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you think they got out to California when Newt Rockne was the head coach? They didn't fly. They took a train and went out there and dominated. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's who they are. That's who they need to be. I think sometimes they overdo it on the schedule. There have been years like Bob Davie had some insanely stupid September schedules. It's like, are you seriously going to ask that dude to play Nebraska, Texas A&M, Michigan State, and Purdue in his first 5 games? Are you kidding me? You know, you can overdo it, but yeah, Notre Dame should have games where they're playing top-level teams. You don't play 4. I mean, guys, like last time Notre Dame won a national championship, y'all know they beat 3 teams that finished the year ranked in the top 5. I think 4 teams that finished the year in the top 10. So yeah, I'm going to look that up again, because I always get the number wrong. So let's say 1988 college football season. I'm going to give you the final rankings of the teams that Notre Dame beat. So Notre Dame, this is the final rankings. Notre Dame beat number 2 Miami, number 5 West Virginia, number 4 Michigan, number 7 USC that season. Those are the teams that Notre Dame beat that year. 4 top 10 teams. In 2019, 1989, where the heck did I get 2019 from? In 1989, Notre Dame beat number 18 Virginia, number 4 Colorado, number 7 Michigan, number 16 Michigan State, number 8 USC. Let's see here. Who else did they play that year? And let's go here. I believe they also played number 15 Penn State as well that year. And number 17 Pitt. Beat 18 Virginia, 4 Colorado, 7 Michigan, 16 Michigan State, 8 USC, 15 Penn State, 17 Pittsburgh. Their only loss that year was to number 1 Miami. If there was a 14 playoff, Notre Dame would have been in the 14 playoff. Right? Like, that's who Notre Dame is supposed to be. right? Now, that's on the heavier side of what a schedule should be. I think the 88 schedule is a little bit more. You had some really, really top 10 teams, and then you had Rice and Navy who stunk, and there's some bum teams on the bottom of it. And then for people like, that's what I'm talking about. But they also played SMU, who literally was in their first season of playing football in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, they also played Purdue, who wasn't good. They played Navy, who wasn't good back then. So they had some mop-up games as well. But they began that season playing the team that finished number 18, the team that finished number 7, and the team that finished number 16, and they won them all. And so it's being true to who Notre Dame is more so than it is anything in regard to some commitment to Subway alum. The Subway alum love Notre Dame because of that commitment. They don't honor that commitment because of the Subway alum, right?
Makes sense. Irish blooded will have more touchdown. Who will have more touchdowns on Saturday? Riley Leonard rushing touchdown or overall passing touchdowns?
I'm gonna go with passing touchdowns.
Yeah, I'll say passing. BK's last brain cell first draft stated that J.J. McCarthy would be the number 1 quarterback in this draft because he's more athletic and accurate than Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Do you agree? I strongly disagree.
I agree that you should never listen to first draft ever again. In all seriousness, though, I would consider taking J.J. McCarthy over those two guys. Consider it. I don't think any of them are top 10 draft picks. None of them. But if J.J. McCarthy would have come back and developed as a player, who knows what Michigan will. I mean, guys, Michigan's a 5-4 team this year with a horrible quarterback situation. You're telling me J.J. McCarthy might not have had an impact on a couple of those games that they lost? You don't think it would have had an impact when they went out and played Washington? I don't think it would have meant anything in relation to beating Texas. I still don't think they would have beat Texas because they still would have got their butts kicked in the trenches in that game. But you don't think that having J.J. McCarthy would have allowed them to be more competitive against Washington or Illinois? And they're probably a 7-2 team right now if J.J. McCarthy comes back, and he'd be having to do more. Would he be playing well enough to be the number 1 overall pick? I don't think any of these guys should be in the conversation for number 1 overall draft pick. None of them. They will because the NFL. But guys, think about all the young quarterbacks that have got benched the last couple of years. Why? Because they were all overdrafted and drafted too young and drafted too high. And the higher you get drafted, the higher expectations are. And that's just the reality of it. So none of them should be considered top 10 draft picks because teams overhype quarterbacks now, which is why certain teams keep cycling through quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. J.J. McCarthy, I mean, Michigan right now is averaging 134.3 passing yards per game. J.J. McCarthy absolutely would have done better than that. I firmly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
John A1, if Kingston Viliama-Asa got a similar amount of snaps as Jalen Smith and Manti Te'o did as freshmen, would he be statistically equal to their production?
Not Manti. I mean, Manti didn't play a ton of snaps as a freshman the whole year. He built up into playing a lot more snaps, but similar production. Yeah, I mean, he's outstanding. I don't put him in the same category as Manti and Jalen quite there, but he's special, no doubt. No doubt. He'd be in the conversation. It'd be similar.
Irish blooded of the Notre Dame certainly not coming back next year. Who do you think gets drafted highest? Extra credit for listing both offense and defense.
Offensively, Riley Leonard. Because it's Riley Leonard can't come back. Mitchell Evans can't come back. Bo Collins can't come back. And Chris Mitchell can't come back. And Jaden Harrison can't come back. Of those, I would assume Riley Leonard. Unless, here's the exception. If Mitchell Evans does what we were just talking about earlier and his medicals check out, he might be the highest drafted guy on offense. I'd say probably Riley right now. Defensively, I'd probably go Xavier Watts over Howard Cross and Riley Mills. Yeah.
I'd do the same.
Yeah.
BK's last brain cell. What commits do you see Notre Dame landing in the final push of the season?
I'm gonna probably hold off on making that comment until we get through this weekend. But I brought it up because I will say this. I know they want another running back. I know they want at least one more receiver. I know they would love to land Jalen Wiggins, and they want at least one more linebacker. That's definitely the goal of the minimum of what they're shooting for. I don't know that they feel the need for a second tight end. I think it's now become kind of a want. They want a second tight end. They want Andrew Olesh more so than they need Andrew Olesh. And I think that's going to be the pitch to him this weekend. It's like, hey, man, like we're actually okay numbers-wise at tight end. We're an 11 personnel team. We don't need 6, 7 tight ends anymore. But what we want to complement James Flanagan, who's more of a attached to the line of scrimmage, play like a more traditional tight end, run deep. I mean, James Flanagan is a stretch the field dominant tight end, but he can do it in more of a Cole Kmet role where a guy like Andrew Olesh is going to be more of like a Tyler Eifert type of player, where he's kind of like a big receiver. And he's not a receiver, but like how you use him is like move him around. It's like we see you guys playing together because we think that can be real dangerous for our football team. I think that's the pitch you're going to see them make with him this weekend. So that's where that's the position wise what they're shooting for right now. And I'll get into more specifics next week after these visits go through.
Irish-blooded, as a play caller, how would you alter your passing game this year for defenses with cornerbacks that always play the same side of the field versus man coverage that switch them?
It just depends on the team and the personnel matchup. So if they play, same side of the field, so you're saying is like left, right, or field boundary, where I know they're always going to be on a certain side of the field, depends on the matchup. Like if you've got a guy that just like, boy, that boundary guy, we're not great in the boundary, and that boundary corner is legit. So I want them to do one of two things. Number one is my game plan is going to be geared towards getting other dudes the ball more, number one. And number two, I can't completely let him shut down the side of the field. So I'm going to have to do some things with my personnel, with my movements to where I can get that guy going. So I may do some things where I get lined up in a deuce alignment, which is a tight end and a receiver to the left, and then to the boundary, and then 2 receivers to the right. And I may have the tight end attached and that other guy's off, and I may bring him in a motion and get him in a 3-by-1 and get that guy chasing. Or I may start off in a 3-by-1 with a tight end backside, which I call trio, and I may bring that guy in motion backside where that guy's got to chase, as opposed to just putting that guy in the boundary, lining up with that corner in his face, not moving, ready to press him. You know what I mean? So like, okay, I got to know that that's a matchup that our guy's not as good as that guy just playing straight up. So I need to do some things to help our guy get on the move. I need to do some things to put that guy in stressful situations that make him think a little bit. So I may send my guy on a vertical and then maybe bring a little bit of a trail route, or I might try to high-low him with some concepts and put him in some binds, get him thinking. So those are all things that I look at, Trevor, and say, this is where you help your guy out. So like if there's a matchup that we're not very good at. Now, the flip side is the opposite is true, Trev. If there's a matchup where it's like I got Will Fuller and their guy is not very good, my play calling is going to be, we're going to find a lot of different ways to exploit that matchup, and we're calling a lot of pass plays with that matchup. So it just depends on the context of what am I facing? What's my personnel? What's the quality of their personnel? What's the skill set of their personnel? They have a big physical guy, and I got a small, fast guy that's not really getting the press. I'm not going to ask my small, fast guy who's not great at getting off the press, who's 175 pounds, to just line up, go one-on-one against that guy who's going to beat him up. So I'm going to do some things to get him moving and back that guy off, and then let it become a speed game. That's all part of play calling is being able to adjust and adapt in a way that allows your players to play to their highest potential relative to the uniqueness of the matchup that you're facing on the other side of the field. And it's not going to be the same thing every week because players are different. Their players are different. Their scheme is different, and you talk about man coverage again. It all fits in the same thing, versus zone coverage. Because if they're playing zone coverage, then and some teams will also, like Notre Dame does not switch sides. They play man but they don't switch sides. They stay on the same side. They still play man. So all those things factor in. I hope that answers your question, Irish Blooded.
Muhammad Abdi, Brian, if you have to pick one position group you would love Notre Dame to recruit at an elite level other than O-line, cornerback, or tight end, and what will it take for it to happen?
Quarterback. You give me 3 quality receivers with an elite quarterback, I'm going to have an elite offense. Like, that's just an elite quarterback can change the game, Trevor. He really can. Yeah.
Yeah, quarterback was going to be my answer, followed by either. I mean, again, you can recruit elite level wide receivers, but if you don't have a good guy to facilitate them the football, then
Yeah.
I think it's both for me, because like there is an argument to be had. I think that sometimes elite wide receivers can make some quarterbacks look better, but I would still err on the side of like my main signal caller of the offense being that elite guy. But I mean, for Notre Dame specifically, I would love for them to recruit wide receivers at an elite level. On defense, I mean, if I'm picking one outside of cornerback, the end.
Yeah, if we're talking defense, it's an elite edge rusher. No question. For the same reason I want an elite quarterback. That just changes the game. Trevor, check that message I just sent you on the private chat. Next, we have a super chat from Christopher LaFaro. Is it just me, or do you all still despise Florida State on the same plane as Michigan and USC? Offer Notre Dame a game Notre Dame won. I can still see Abraham late hitting everyone that's scored a touchdown. For me, I don't blame Florida State for that. I blame pollsters for that. I have a grudge towards the AP and the coaches poll, not towards Florida State. Florida State went out and handled what they needed to do the next couple weeks, and next week, and Notre Dame didn't. So that's more. I've never had a hatred. I've always had a respect for Florida State. I have. I mean, they never ducked Miami like Florida did. They would travel all the country and play people. Like, I've always had a level of respect for Florida State. Now, I love Spurrier, but I didn't respect Florida. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I don't hate Florida. I mean, I'm mad that they got the title and Notre Dame did, but again, I don't blame Florida State for that. I blame the people that gave them the title for that.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different. Like I saw Notre Dame play Florida State. I watched them in the 2011 bowl game. I watched them in the 2014 game in Tallahassee, and then all the games recently. And none of those to me sprung up I guess like those hatred games that like USC and Michigan did for me. I mean, the first USC game that I watched with my dad was the 2005 push game. And that's when I learned at a very young age that sports can affect how you feel the remainder of a weekend. So always hated USC, like that hatred of that rivalry. I've always been there. So Florida State isn't up there for me, but an argument could be made that like those peak rivalries and, how the 93 season ended, like peaked some of that rivalry, but it was a little bit before my time. So, I think that probably weighs a little bit in my decision, I would say. Got one here from Chen Boat. Are we Michigan fans this weekend? I mean, I always like seeing an upset. I think upsets are fun. I will say that I don't know how much Oregon losing would do for Notre Dame per se. Like, let's just say Michigan beats Oregon. I don't think Notre Dame then jumps Oregon, right? So maybe I think it creates more chaos within the Big Ten. I think it makes the Big Ten championship that much more interesting. But again, like I said, I'm also a little biased. It takes a lot for me to root for Michigan on any given weekend. But I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, they play Indiana. They played Oregon last weekend. I mean, yeah, Yeah, that's my bad. So from the standpoint of them playing IU, I don't know because I still think that IU is going to lose to Ohio State no matter what happens. I think if Michigan beats IU, then like their chances of making the playoffs are very, very, very slim. So I mean, from that context, because I completely forgot that they played Oregon last weekend, not this weekend. Then yeah, I don't know, man. It's just hard for me to ever root for Michigan. I got to be honest with you, especially since I think that Ohio State's going to take care of business against IU. So I don't know, but I see where you're coming from. Another one from Domer Grizz. Happy Friday. Has Jadarian Price shown enough this year to be a day 2 draft pick? If not, would he be better suited splitting carries at Notre Dame next year or being the workhorse somewhere else? That's interesting. I don't think that he has shown enough, if I'm being honest with you. Like what he's done this year has been extremely exciting. I think his sample size has just been a little bit too small. So far this season, he's had 54 carries, 348 yards. Right now he's averaging 6.4 yards a carry, and he has 3 touchdowns through 8 games. So, I mean, he's getting, what is that? Quick math. I mean, right now, Jadarian Price is averaging 6.75 carries a game. So I don't know if that, I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's going to be enough for him to be a day 2 draft pick. I think it would suit him to come back next year and continue to split carries. I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, I'm kind of in the same spirit of Brian as I don't know. I don't like to predict whether kids are going to transfer out or whether they're going to stay. I think Jadarian has a really good thing going on here at Notre Dame. I think they're very much going to be in the conversation of title contender next year. So in terms of your first question, Domer Grizz, I don't think he's done enough this year to be a day 2 draft pick. Because most of the time, like unless it is an elite level running back, most running backs go in the second round anyways. And those are guys that like routinely like perform. I'm pretty sure Jonathan Taylor was a second round day 2 guy. So Jadarian Price having like 3 touchdowns on the year and like 6.75 carries a game. I don't think so. I mean, he's very explosive and he's a great runner, but I don't think that, I mean, right now he's probably on pace for finishing the season with around, including postseason, probably around 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns. He'll probably get close to, he'll probably get close to 600 yards rushing. I don't think that would make him a day 2 pick. I don't. So yeah, probably not. But I do think he would still be suited splitting carries next year in the Notre Dame backfield. But like I said, I don't like to predict whether a kid is going to stay or whether they're going to leave.
His game needs to grow also, Trev. You know, like he needs to be more he's going through some of the impatience that Jeremiah Love went through last year. There's a question about that we'll get to. You know, his game still needs to grow. He's a talented back. And the other thing too, Trev, NFL doesn't devalue splitting carries the way that they used to. In fact, if they think you have the talent to be really good, splitting carries is kind of viewed positively as long as the production is there, because you don't have the tread on your tires that other guys might have. So it's just a little different than maybe it used to be. You know, where Terrell Davis is kind of the number 2 back behind Garrison Hurst, and he doesn't get picked till the 6th round. You know, and doesn't have the production or whatever. It's a little different animal. So
yeah.
Is this in the other one? How many questions did you get through?
I got through the one that we were on where you left, and then this one, and then the Are We Michigan fans this weekend?
Yeah. What was your answer to that one?
I said it's hard for me to be a Michigan fan in any scenario. Like I get it. At first, I started talking about them like playing Oregon, and I forgot that they had played last week. So that's a mistake on my part. Forgot they were playing IU. But I said, like, I think that IU's going to lose to Ohio State when that game comes.
Sure.
So, but
losing twice would help Notre Dame a little bit. Can I say this, Trev? There's a difference between rooting for Michigan to win a game and being a Michigan fan.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like that's my answer to that. I don't know that I can ever say I'm a Michigan fan for whatever, even for a game. There's a difference between, and so I'll say, hey, I'm rooting for them to win, but I'm still not a fan. I still hate that football program, but I want them to win this weekend.
I was about to say,
beating Indiana does help Notre Dame, in my opinion.
I think in that light, I would rather IU lose than Michigan win, even though they're playing each other this year. That's how I would give my answer, I guess, in short. John A1, would you project Bryce Young to have similar frame and athletic ability as Julius Peppers when it's time for him to graduate from Notre Dame? 3 or 4 program years.
It's possible. He's a really, really athletic. He's tall, 6'7". He's 250 plus. He's athletic. I don't think Bryce is the basketball player that Julius was, but I think he can be somewhat of a similar impact. I mean, again, is his production 19.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks? Maybe. But as far as style of play, if I was going to comp him from a size and skill set standpoint, would Julius Peppers be a pretty good comp? Yeah, it would be a pretty good comp. Is he going to be the dominant top 5 NFL draft pick type of elite Heisman contending defensive player that Julius was? That's asking a lot. If he's that's awesome. I'm not saying he's going to be that, but as far as a skill set, like a draft type of comp, a skill evaluation type of comp, I think it's a very fair comparison, John. Very fair.
BK's last brain cell. What is it that you think is holding back players like Devin Houston and Preston Zinder from seeing the field other than depth?
It's a different answer for different players. For Devin, it's, he missed most of last year with an injury. So he's still kind of developing as a player. He's just still a lot of work to do. And he's at a position with a lot of very experienced players. He's just not ready yet. For Preston Zinner, it's unfortunate he is he's not. What's holding him back is he's a kid that 3-4 years ago would have played a lot of football as he currently is. He's just on a Notre Dame linebacker depth chart that's absolutely loaded with just even better players. I mean, it sucks for the kid, and that's why I say you got to find a place to play this kid because he's too good of a football player not to find a home for. But, I mean, guys, in 2020, Preston Zinter is starting over Shane Simon. This version of Preston Zinter, in my opinion, starts over Shane Simon on a playoff team in 2020. He's on a position where Notre Dame is just disgustingly loaded with talented young linebackers. Like if there's an injury and it's like, oh, we're gonna have to play Preston Zinter this week, I'm like, all right, let's roll. All right, it'll be all right. You know what I mean? It's an unfortunate situation for him. It really is. It's just timing. That's what I kind of chalk it up to.
It's a good issue to have as a program.
Yep.
Hulk strongest. If Rocket was on this team, will he be used like Love or would he be more in the slot?
I think he'd be more of a slot guy. That you would he would be the inverse of Jeremiah Love. He would be used like Love, but in an opposite way. He'd be a receiver that you would occasionally get the ball to in the backfield on jets, but also on goodness gracious, could you imagine going to an alignment where you're doing like power read with Rocket and Riley Leonard? You know what I mean? And Jadarian Price is the lead blocker, or Jeremiah Love is a lead blocker, or get in a situation where, I mean, I'd go, if he was a receiver, I'd go trying to think of 12 personnel. I'd go 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tights, and 1 receiver. And I'd put my 2 tight ends on the outside, and I'd have Rocket in the slot on one side, Jeremiah Love in the slot on the other side, and I'm running read zone with Riley Leonard with RPO screen game stuff to the outsides, saying, good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, we got to respect Rocket and Jeremiah. All right, cool. Jadarian, go do your thing. You know what I mean? We got to respect the run game. All right, cool. How about let's hit this bubble screener now, screen a rocket, and let him do his thing. You know what I mean? Oh, you guys want to come up and play cover zero? Hey, let's throw this little quick fade ball to Mitchell Evans on the outside against the corner or a safety. I mean, it's like you'd have so many things you could have fun with him. Like jet sweeps, screens, and then, oh, by the way, he's going to run go routes and wheel routes and over routes that as a 4-2.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think they would use rocket very similar to how they used Amir Carlisle. I think.
But he'd be
like just getting
way better.
Way faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Domer Grizz, the Heisman house is on campus today, and I had no idea it was a blow-up thing like a bouncy house. Was it something that was completely different than what you expected when you finally saw it?
It's actually kind of funny when I saw this question earlier. I'm trying to think about, and like, there's some things I've seen that are just like going out to Colorado and visiting my then girlfriend, now wife. You know, I've seen mountains, but like you don't have the same like, wow, just breathtaking view looking down from the mountains as you do when you're actually there. I don't know if that's necessarily what he's referring to. So I was thinking about one, and here's one. So my dad is from Norfolk, Virginia. That's where he grew up, lived there until he was 16. They moved to Ohio, left home, moved to Ohio, met my mom. And so we would go home every summer to visit his family and vacation and stuff like that, right? And I remember one time as a kid being told that we were going to go to Mount Trashmore. And there's a big mountain, it's a big hill that was made out of trash. So as a kid, I'm envisioning literally a big hill of trash. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't out at the time, but like if in your head, if you're envisioning what remember the big trash mountains that they had in Idiocracy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like something like that. Just this big hill of really high of trash, Mount Trash. I said, well, what is it, Dad? He goes, it's a big hill that's basically made of, it's got trash underneath it. Well, I, in my head, removed the dirt and grass and other parts of it, and I just saw big thing of trash. So when I saw it, and it's just a giant hill, I'm like, well, this is kind of disappointing. Like I'm like 10. I'm expecting a big giant pile of trash. And it's just a hill that's got trash. I can't even see the trash. It's like, well, this is kind of lame. So it's like, that was one of those things where I was expecting something completely different from what I saw. So that's my Mount Trashmore experience in Virginia.
Mine was, and some people, when I've told them this story, could not disagree with me more, and others could not disagree with me more. Mine, I went and saw Niagara Falls my senior year of high school. And I don't know why, if I just had it built up in my mind that it was going to just be some crazy thing. Maybe it's because it was in, I think it was in Superman 2 with Christopher Reeves. And I just had Niagara Falls built up to be this crazy, like, wonder of the world type things. And I was visiting a buddy that lived in Buffalo, New York. And we went out there and I was like, dude, like, I got to go see Niagara Falls. Like, let's go today. And I got in at like 10:30 at night. He's like, well, we can't, but we can go tomorrow. That was juice. We woke up, we went out there, and I was like, cool. Like, we got there and I was like, so what is there to do? And he's like, I mean, we can go on Maid of the Mist if you want, but outside of that, like, we're here. This is it.
Yeah.
And I was
so
like,
did you go down underneath it?
We did do the Maid of the Mist. And that was, I will say, being down like in it was really cool.
Yeah.
But like when we were just like up on the thing, I was like just kind of looking at it and I was like,
it's much cooler. It's much cooler looking at it from certain angles. It's really cool looking. In others, it's like, especially, were you looking at it at first from behind the falls?
Yeah.
Okay. There's an angle that you can see it from where you're looking at the falls. And that's pretty cool.
Huh.
So,
okay.
But yeah, looking behind, it's like, okay, this is sort of anticlimactic. Like, I don't want to be in there because I die, but like, you know,
right.
It's like, all right, cool, whatever. Being on the opposite side of it's actually pretty cool.
Well, and it was also really cool because we found out through a lot of storytelling that Lauren, my now wife, at that point in time, she was also in Niagara Falls with her family that same weekend. So we were there.
Really? And you didn't know her
Yeah.
at the time?
No, I had no idea who she
Oh,
was.
that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking. I was
That's
talking
really
about
wild.
because I told her that story, and she's like, "Yeah, I went to Niagara Falls like my junior year of high school." And I was like, "Okay, well, we're a year apart. So when
Yeah.
did you go?" She's like July, and I was like, "Yeah, me too." So she went back and looked at old pictures, and then I went back and looked at old pictures and like when they were posted, and I was like, "Oh my
That's
god,
freaking hilarious.
yeah."
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. I
small
love
world,
this.
man.
It definitely is. I love this response from Beefeater ND08. Mount Trashmore, you mean Ann Arbor?
That's
Well
great.
played. Well played.
See what you did there.
I love it. That's awesome.
Super chat from Matthew Leahy. Thank you for the super chat, Matt. Going to my first Notre Dame game this weekend. Any key spots to hit up? Tips for game day? Thanks, Brian and IB, for the great content. Well, I do know of a really good spot that you can hit up.
Yeah.
Compliments of our fearless leader, Brian Driscoll.
IB Tailgate.
Uh-huh.
IB Tailgate. Yeah. If this is your first Notre Dame game, definitely swing by the tailgate. Meet us, talk to us. But spend most of your time, like I've told people, if it's your first time, just walk around. Like literally just walk around, see it all. It's an amazing campus. Head over, and the best way that I would say do it is, come meet us at if you're there, come meet us at the tailgate, or start kind of on the athletic side. Go see the indoor facility, the Goog, and all that. Just kind of get that out of the way, and then head over to the library, which is the Touchdown Jesus, which is pretty cool. And then start making your way over the administration building. That's where the dome is. Check out the basilica, and then head over to the grotto, which I think is a really cool thing. If you're someone who, I'm not Catholic, but I also am someone who believes in the power of prayer. So I actually do have spent time at the grotto. It's just a place where I really feel like you can, especially if you're there when it's not a game day, where it's not a tourist attraction, you're actually there where it's a little bit quiet. It is a place where I can just kind of like feel God's presence. And then there's a beautiful lake right there that's just gorgeous. And then kind of make your way back through kind of like the quad areas and the dorms and just enjoy the scenery as you walk over towards the bookstore. Like that's the best, in my opinion, the best way to kind of get through campus and just experience it all. It's just all different aspects. You'll see all these statues, which I really like. Just be on campus as long as you can and just walk around. And then when you're done with that, come back to tailgate, you know what I mean? And get ready for the game. But I just think it's a gorgeous campus. And there's just so much history and tradition. And some of it's like, the old place where they used to have the Bengal bouts and the basketball team played. That's not there anymore. And, it's like some of the stuff is gone, but even still, there's still a ton of tradition, still a ton of history. And it's just a gorgeous, especially this time of year, Trevor, with the leaves turning and stuff. It's just there's nothing more beautiful. And I don't know, we might have missed it because we missed like all of October playing at home. But like when you get those late October, early November games, I'm very curious to see what it looks like. But if you're up in the press box, you can actually see out over campus and over, the western side of town, and it's just trees. And it's always pretty, but in the fall when they're like red and orange and yellow, it's just like, oh, so beautiful. I'm hoping that they haven't all fallen by now and that you can see that because it's a gorgeous sight. And then when the sun's setting on the trees, because it's setting on the west, because you're looking out west towards the trees, dude, it's just like, man, I don't know how you don't believe in God when you're just looking at something like this. You know what I mean? It is a thing of beauty, man. It really is. But just experience all of it. Honestly, Matthew, just experience as much as you can. Just make sure you come by and say hi to us. But that's my thing. It's just experience it all. Experience it all.
Yeah, get there at a good time. I plan on getting there early. I know the IB tailgate is going to start around, like you said, sometime in between noon and 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm probably going to get to campus that day at like 10 a.m. It's my first time being up there since last season. Last season, I had season tickets, and Lauren and I were up there every home game, and it was a lot of fun. But I have my game day routine down and what we would do. But I mean, I can't echo enough of everything that Brian said. Another thing, everybody likes to line up for the players walk. They like when you see the Notre Dame players and the coaching staff walk from like the Basilica to the stadium, which is a lot of fun. So that typically starts, I believe, like 2.5 hours before kickoff. I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, because if it was
player
like
walk,
yeah. I'm almost positive it's 2.5 hours before kickoff, because I remember there being some 2:30 kickoff games and it would start at like noon, the player walk. So I'll go back and look at my phone and I'll post it on the board if that would help anybody if they want to see it, because I have videos of the timestamp of when the players walk was, and I can look back and see what the kickoff time was. But it's remotely the same, give or take a couple of minutes. But that was a really cool experience. I was at the Notre Dame Ohio State game last year.
Oh, nice.
And there was something about that player walk that just hit just a little different. Like, you want to talk, I mean, it was in September. So like when the sun was setting, it was still light, but like it was shining through the trees. And then you just had like all of the Notre Dame football players just walking down from, the Basilica down to the stadium, just all in like 3-piece suits and like sunglasses. Like Maris Leofau had his like, his like whole get up, like all the lays and everything. And it was the players walk is something that I will recommend to everybody. I will say if it starts at noon, I will say get to like that courtyard in between Touchdown Jesus and the stadium at like 11:30, because people will stand up and like wait along that sidewalk for a while.
I have never done the players walk. Yeah. I've only been to 2 games Notre Dame gives my life as a fan. Every other game I've been to is in this capacity.
Sure.
And so it's a little weird for me when I'm having to evaluate and be an analyst I feel like doing the player walk is very much a fan thing. And that's not a negative. If I was a fan and I went to as many games as I've been to as a fan, I would have definitely gone and seen it. I just feel a little weird in my role doing the player walk. I just do. I have been walking around on the Brian Kelly era. There was a year I was talking to the parent of a player, and the players left the Goog to start the player walk. So I guess that's I was there for the player walk, but I wasn't there for the player walk. You know what I'm saying? I was meeting a friend and they came out, and it's a little different when you're on the side as they're getting closer to the stadium. Like I've heard, my wife's done it. She got some pictures from it one time and she wanted to experience it. I wasn't going to tell her no. Honey, we're here. We have to be professional. No, let her have fun with it. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was pretty cool.
Mohammed Abdi, Brian, do you think Brian Kelly destroyed what made LSU win championships? Strong running game and elite secondary, hence why he loses big games. And do you think Marcus Freeman prioritizes those 2 positions?
Well, I don't know that I would say LSU wins championships because of a strong running game. I don't know that that's something that I would say is accurate. I mean, they definitely they ran it okay in 2019, but they were a team that passed for a ton of yards. They ran for 166 yards and 4.9 yards per carry that year. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 1,400 yards. That's less than 100 per game there, and no one else had over 200 or over 300 other than the quarterback. So it's kind of like in the NFL, like, it's got 1,000 yards rushing, but that team wasn't good at running football because they played 16 games, now 17 games, and nobody else carried the ball. You know what I mean? So it's like not all that impressive. So I think that's a little bit of a different situation. And then they ran the ball relatively well in 2007. But again, they were a team that was built around, having some really good pass catchers and being balanced and things like that. They had Brandon LaFell, Demetrius Byrd, Early Doucette. They were a balanced offense. They were good. They were a much better rushing team then than they were now. So you could maybe say the 2007 team was a team built around that. Elite secondary, sure. I don't really blame Brian Kelly for the not having elite secondary outside the standpoint of they have not recruited the position well. He didn't inherit his secondary had been decimated before he arrived. He hasn't done anything to build it back up. And he made a bad coordinator hire, and it took him 2 years to kind of fix it. The running game thing, again, I don't think that's why they're not a championship team. I think it's more so they don't have championship talent right now, and they don't have a head coach that knows how to get his team up for enough of those games to be competitive in those games, especially if they're away from home. So I think the issue lies more with just Brian Kelly's unwillingness or inability to develop a championship culture more than anything. Because Brian Kelly's had running teams at Notre Dame that couldn't win championships because the culture wasn't right. The rest of the pieces weren't there. The way that Brian Kelly's always been is if you could take this part of this Kelly team, this part of that Kelly team, this part of this Kelly, that's a great team. Because they would always say, hey, there was years they had a championship defense and a crap offense. Years they had championship offense and a crap defense. Teams they had pretty good in both, and their special teams cost them football games. Years where they were really good at the offensive line was elite, and you didn't have the skill talent. There's always something missing with Brian Kelly, and that's what happens when you don't invest enough of your time in building your roster and cultivating your roster, and you're too busy. I like going out to speak to people because I like people kissing my butt, and I love playing golf. You know what I mean? That's what happens. That's what happens, and that's bigger issue. That is more of the issue, and then it leads to them not strong enough at certain positions to win games.
Beezer 12 washing beard with a super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Just popping in on my way to the football Holy Land for the first time. Let's go Irish. Hoping to see some IB gear out there.
Well, if you come to our tailgate tomorrow, you'll definitely see some IB gear. I'll have IB gear on. I think, Trevor, will you have some IB gear on tomorrow? Hopefully you do. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. Yeah, make that note. Got your notepad out.
No, I have it. Don't you worry.
Yeah. I do need to order you a hoodie, by the way. I got to get your size again for hoodies and get that done. It's that time of year. But yeah, safe travels, man. Appreciate the super chat very, very much, and we hope to see you. Hope to see you out there. I was thinking about bringing like name things to put people's like screen names on it, and then their real name. But I don't think his would fit on there. Beezer 12 washing beer. I don't think it'd fit on the. He might need a couple of them.
That is one thing that's going to be fascinating. Is I can't wait to meet everybody but it's going to be funny introducing people as their screen name,
because that's usually how people introduce themselves. Yeah,
that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Hey, how you doing, Trevor? It's nice to meet you. I'm Beezer 12 washing beard. That's
also
awesome.
known as Jason or something. You know
what I mean? Right. Oh, that's awesome. Zach Martin, with a buy-sell hold. Buy-sell hold. Would Jeremiah Love had been patient enough last year to wait that split second before the hole opened up on the 60-yard run versus Navy?
No. For a similar reason to why Jadarian Price has issues with that a little bit this year, because his carries were very limited, and he was always looking to score. What Jeremiah has learned this year is don't look to score, trust the blocking, trust the scheme, then know when, and you'll know when to let your talent take over. Jeremiah Love was getting the ball, and he's like, I'm going to the house. Crap, there's a bunch of guys right there. You know what I mean? And he'd get there too early, and the timing wasn't good. He rushed a lot. Now he has more patience. He has more of that feel for the position to where he'll kind of set it up, boom, explode through the hole. It's a great observation, Zach. No, I don't think he would have had the patience for that last year to make that kind of run. It's a great observation.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. Brian and I talked earlier this year about how much of a better, just pure running back Jeremiah Love is. I mean, he's more patient. He's finishing runs better. So that's a really good observation, man.
I'd love to see him have over these next couple of weeks like a monster game that gets him closer to 1,000 yards in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Notre Dame plays 2-3 games, he'll probably get to 1,000 yards. I would imagine he's going to certainly has a great shot to get to 10 touchdowns since he's, like at 9 already, but he's at 564 yards. So he needs 436, right? Let me do the math here real quick. Yeah. 436 divided by 4 games. He only needs to average 109 yards per game.
Or not. Yeah.
Yeah, 109 yards per game in the last 4 games. I mean, if he has, and that might not seem like a lot, but he's only had 2 100-yard games this season, and his at 109 and is his highest. Yeah. Just because they split carries, and they should continue that. That'd be nice if like there was that one monster game of like 180, 190 yards, which kind of means he doesn't have to go for over 100 every week, because you still want Jadarian to be fresh. You still want him to be part of what they're doing. You're going to need both of them in the postseason. That'd be That'd be nice. Or he does it on like 13 carries. You know what I mean? That'd be really nice. This is well done. Jeff Luke, would you say love is patient, love is kind? Love is patient, but he's not kind to opposing defenses. So very well done, my man.
Especially when he's a lead run blocker.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely not kind, man.
That was funny. That one got me.
That was very well done.
Joseph Barrett, what are Notre Dame's chances with Derek Meadows?
I mean, look, he's visiting this weekend. So anytime a kid's coming on campus on his own dime late in the season, there's a chance. There's certainly a chance. I think right now, if I was a betting man based on the intel I have, I think right now coming into the visit, they'd be third behind LSU and Michigan. Michigan is there if they flip Bryce Underwood. If they don't flip Bryce Underwood, I don't know that they'll get him. I could see him sticking with LSU, but that's what the visit's for. Get him on campus, make your pitch, remind him of why you think he's such a great fit, and go about it that way. So coming out of the visit, I may change my mind, Joseph, but going into the visit right now, I'd say Notre Dame's third of three. There's not super distance between the top two. I mean, again, he's coming to this on this campus on his own dime. His parents have chosen to spend money to get him up here for this visit. So they got a puncher's chance. Just right now, as of today, I'd say that they're third. That could change coming out of the visit, which is why you bring guys on to visits. Right now, I would not say that Notre Dame is the clear leader for Nathaniel Usu-Boateng. That's why you want to get him on campus, so you can change that and have him leave campus with you are being the top team. Same with Madden Faramo, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with all those. It's just the visit's going to tell us a lot.
Broke Neck Boy, 2007 Notre Dame versus 2024 Florida State.
I think 2007 Notre Dame was better because that team at least tried hard. They just, you know, I mean, and you know, you had a guy like Jimmy Clausen that you just kind of felt like, you know, this guy's going to be special. It's not there yet, but he's going to be special. And, you know, you had enough time where you go out there and win 3 games, right? I mean, this Florida State team is like, they don't even like sometimes like parts of their team don't even play hard. They probably have more high level veteran talent. They're much more experienced. Much more experienced.
Yeah.
But there's just something missing there, man, where you could point to all the issues Notre Dame had, you know? And like there with Florida State, you're just like, dude, there's something missing with this team. There's just something not there with this team. With Notre Dame, it's like, well, yeah, it's going to happen when you start 13 freshmen. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's so crazy about Florida State, Trevor. It's like you look at their roster, it's like 6-year senior, 5th-year senior, redshirt junior. It's like, dude, they're not that young. Notre Dame is a way younger team than Florida State. Way younger.
Yeah, significantly.
Yeah. All right.
That'd be an interesting game.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very low. No, it'd be so low scoring.
I would watch that game. It would look a lot like the Notre Dame Stanford game from 2007. It would look a lot like that.
That David Grimes catch was still a touchdown, by the way.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Tom Redinger, you might not know the answer to this, but has Freeman figured out practices and consistency during the week?
It's not that you might not know I mean, talk to me in 4 weeks, right? Tom, it's a very fair question. Very fair question. But the thing is, like, we didn't know. I mean, I actually had heard some rumblings about the practice, but you're like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. You know, going to Northern Illinois, I'd heard some things that had me a little concerned. Well, let's see how it goes. And it didn't go well. If I'd have seen that game coming, I would have predicted Northern Illinois to upset Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, you don't really know until it happens. And so the more they win in a row, the more they play with more consistency. I mean, everyone's going to have down games. Marcus Freeman is not going to coach the next 5 years and never lose another game. He's not going to go the next 5 years and not get upset by somebody. It's going to happen. Doesn't mean like, oh, here we go, 2022 all over. I'm like, bro, it's 2029. We need to move past the Marshall game. Okay, like let's move past it. They've won 2 titles. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we need to move past that. Okay, let's move on, dude. It's get over the Northern Illinois game. I'll never get over that game. You know, they won 3 titles in a row, right? I don't care. You know, it's like should be 7. You know what I mean? There's always that kind of craziness, but like until he shows that they're going to do. I mean, yeah, it's nice that they're on a 6-game win streak. That's nice, but can you get it to 10? You know, like that's going to answer the question. If they go out there and smack Florida State this weekend, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's figured that out, because consistency is something that is needs to be over a longer period of time.
Yeah, it's something that you're just going to see. You're good. I was going to say it's just something that you see on the field. Like there's nothing there's no report that would come out in practice that it would be like, oh yeah, no, they've got it figured out. It's if they continue to win and look good doing it, that's how you know you have your answer. Jacob Hayden.
Thanks,
for the
Jacob.
college football playoff, do they rearrange the bracket to always give the lowest seed the highest seeded opponent, or however the 12-team bracket plays out is who you play no matter what?
It's the latter. It's so basically 12 is going to play 5 no matter what. 11 is going to play 6 no matter what. Now, having said that, so when I did my bracket, my original bracket, I had Tennessee 12, Georgia 5. I flipped them. I flipped somebody to 12 and Tennessee up to 11. I forget who it was. Because I do think they may not be able to, but I do think they will try to avoid late season rematches in round 1. I don't know that they'll care as much about round 2, but I do think they would like to avoid those in round 1. You know, so I flipped it. I could see them doing something like that. But, 12, for the most part, 12 is going to be 12, 11 is going to be 11, and then that's how they match up. You know what I mean? So I don't think they rearrange the bracket for that. It's so now the other part of it is it doesn't always mean the team ranked 5th is going to be 5 and the team ranked 12th is going to be 12. There's a scenario in which the 12th ranked team is out of the playoff because one of the automatic bids goes to team ranked number 17. They would then jump in at 12, and then the 12th ranked team falls out. There are scenarios where if you're 11th and 12th, you could both get knocked out of the playoff. If numbers 4 and 5 conference champions are outside the top 12, they get in because of the automatic bid. So now 11 and 12 drop out. So I think I touched on it on the couple different ways you could be answering that. But they will rank the teams 1 through 12. And then the seeding will be arranged based on who the conference champions are. So the only way in which a number 1 ranked team is not the number 1 overall seed is if that team that's ranked number 1 is Notre Dame or Washington State or Oregon State, because they'd be at-large teams. So they'd be the 5 seed, even though they're the number 1 ranked team. The only way the number 2 ranked team is not the number 2 seed is if they are from the same conference. So like right now, Ohio State and Oregon, or Oregon and Ohio State are 1 and 2. If you were to project them into seeds, Ohio State goes to the 5 seed because they're not a conference champ. So seeds 1, 2, 3, and 4 may not be and likely won't be ranked teams number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So and that's what I thought ESPN actually did a decent job of, which, I mean, they should have because they're not idiots. You'd hope to think they're not idiots. But when they did their bracket, they didn't just put 1 through 12 and do it that way. They actually put the highest seeded. They actually put the highest ranked conference champions in there as sort of the de facto conference champions. If the season ended today, this is who'd be that way. And then so Ohio State was the 5 seed, even though Penn State was the 6th ranked team, they were the 7 seed. That kind of way. And so they did that way. So, but that's how it'll be. They'll have a 1 through 12 ranking, and then they pull the four highest ranked champions out of there, and then everybody else moves up a slot or falls down a slot if the number 4 champion is a team that is outside the top 12. Does that make sense? So hopefully that Thomas Lambers, they are idiots. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice, man. I was trying to be kind. I've been shown a lot of support, love, and kindness the last 12 hours or so. So I'm just trying to repay it in full. So, but yes, they are. They are.
Joe M. I personally think Boubacar showed he was ready. Did Marcus Freeman have a conversation with Botello letting him know if he comes back, it'll be as a role player, or will it be an open competition for the job?
It'll certainly be an open competition because you have to understand, Joe, Boubacar, we don't know what kind of player Boubacar and Jordan are going to be next fall because of the injuries that they suffered. Jordan's was a I was going to say Patelho, a patella for Patelho. And that's a little bit different than what I understand Boubacar's injury to be, which I think is what I was told is a little bit more severe than just an ACL. So what if Boubacar's not ready to play? Do you really want Jordan Patelho being convincing himself all offseason, well, I'm just going to be a backup, which either A, he prepares like a backup, or B, he goes somewhere else when you may need him to be your starter. But the other thing too is, even if Boubacar comes back and he's the starter, as we've seen this year, they want to play both a lot because the expectation is it's a 16-game season. I don't want to play Boubacar 50 snaps every game. And there's going to be some games where maybe this is a game that Pateljo's unique skill set serves better, so they play him a little bit at Viper, and Pateljo can play field. Because what they were doing with Pateljo before Pateljo got hurt, is they were cross-training Boubacar to play both end spots. So at times, him and Pateljo were going to be on the field together. I see no reason not to do that next year. Like, if it was up to me, I would have Pateljo and Burnham both capable of playing both end positions next season. So let's say that my starters are Pateljo and Burnham. Pateljo at Viper, Burnham at field. There's going to be, end. There may be times I want to go big, so I may put Burnham at Viper and as a rotation and Bryce Young at end, or there's times I may want to go a little bit smaller and I'm resting Pateljo or Burnham, so I maybe put Boubacar at end to be more a little bit twitchier, but a little bit more athletic. You know what I mean? And I may have him at end and Logan Thomas at Viper. So like I would cross train those two a little bit, even more so Boubacar, because I think he has a very unique skill set that allows him to be a pass rusher at both end positions, a really dynamic pass rusher. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to do that as well. And there may be times that, if they are rotating, there may be times when that you can have them on the field together in certain situations, especially on third down. You slide Bryce Young into 3 technique and, on third down, 3rd and 9, and now you've got all, 3 of those guys in the field. Maybe you could also still have Burnham on the field if it's 3rd and long enough, you know what I mean? And let them all 4 get after it. So that, so you don't want to tell guys, hey, you're going to be a role player. I want you to compete your freaking butt off. And if you beat out Boubacar, you beat out Boubacar. Because like what you're doing next year is not determined by what you did last year. You have to go re-earn that spot. Boubacar needs to get healthy and re-earn that role. You don't just assume he's going to be the player he was, even if there was no injury, because not everybody puts in the work and develops the same way. Sometimes guys get way better. You know what I mean? So he's going to have to earn that spot. Pateljo's going to have to earn that spot. And at the end of the day, your hope is that they both justify playing them a lot. And that way you have a great rotation there. So it's a good question. And then here's the last one. And we're going to end on this note right here.
Jeff Fluke, would you consider Mike Denbrock and Al Golden a big advantage if the playoff berth becomes real?
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. I mean, it's 2 of the best coordinators in the game. So, yeah. I think Al Golden has also coached in a playoff that's much more similar to this one, where a lot of college coaches haven't. Coaching in the NFL, he was part of that Bengals team that went to the Super Bowl. Where you've got to quickly turn around and change a lot of things because you have a completely different opponent the next week. So I think that helps him a little bit as well.
Yeah. I mean, you have 2 of the best coordinators in all of college football. It's absolutely an advantage. 2 very experienced, 2 very seasoned coordinators. It is a major advantage that Marcus Freeman has those 2 guys going into the postseason. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because none of these coaches have really been through this, right?
Right.
In the way that the playoff is going to be now. I mean, if anything, there's some coaches that have come from the FCS level that are going to be more prepared for this type of thing. Like I have a lot more experience coaching in a college playoff system than Marcus Freeman does, because I came from the Division III level where we make the playoff and you play on a Saturday, and if you win, you play the next Saturday. You win, you play the next. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you got to win 4 or 5 games, and so it's like, okay, so your mindset's different. Whereas in the past, it's like, okay, you get a month off and then you play, and that's kind of that's kind of how I view it. Where the other way to look at it is guys come from the NFL, like Al Golden, Dylan McCullough. I believe Dylan McCullough was a coach on the championship, the Chiefs' first Super Bowl team, wasn't he? First or second Super Bowl team?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Like, I know he was on one of their Super Bowl teams. My only question is, which one was it? That's my only question. I'm gonna look that up now and find out. So he was on the Chiefs from 18 to 20. So he would have been on their Super Bowl champs. He would have been on their first one, the 19 team. Well, second Super Bowl, but first one in the modern era. They won one with Len Dawson back in the day. It beat the Vikings, but like the first one of the current run of Super Bowls, which was in 2019. So he knows what it's like. And he was in the playoffs all 3 years, I believe, with the Chiefs. So he has some understanding of that. And so that's kind of how I look at it. We actually have 2 more, Joe, that popped up. So let's get one from Just Your Ordinary Joe, and then we'll get to Nathan Milton, Indy Milton fans super chat.
All right. Sounds good. Just Your Ordinary Joe merch madness idea. IB shirts or hats that identify which of the 2 live game chat you are.
So for those who aren't on the board, we have 2 game day chats. We have one that's called the free for all, and the other one that's called, I think it's Calm, right? I put Calm on there.
Yeah.
Because what was happening is the super chats were just just devolving into just insanity. And some people like, dude, I just want to have a calm discussion of what I'm saying, and not everyone needs to be fired and benched and losing my mind because they didn't get a first down on the first drive of the game, right? Like, and so we had to, it's sad we had to do this, but we kind of had to do this where we had to make 2 live game chats. One of them is for people that want to emotionally overreact to the game. The other one is for people that maybe want a little bit more of a calm approach. And, of course, the you all know which one has more posts and is longer. It's always the free for all. You know what I mean? Where it's a little bit more emotional. But that'd be hilarious, Joe. It is.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's actually not a Trev. Can you write that down? That's actually not a terrible idea, Joe. Like, I think that'd be fun, and it doesn't cost me anything to design it. If people want to buy it, they can buy it. That'd be hilarious. And then we could do it where next year for the one whatever tailgate we do, hopefully we'll do 2. We were going to do 2 this year, but my mom had an illness, and then my grandmother, and then they were moving, and so it's just a little tougher to get to 2. But our hope was to do 2 of them. But like maybe next year for the first one, we'll have everybody have like an IB, and then have whatever shirt that they're a part of. Would be pretty awesome if you buy them.
Awesome.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Oh, that's funny.
I love that. I love that. The Troll Hunter super chat, just don't want this dance to end. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Poor Deidre. I saw he hopped on because he was in meetings.
Yeah,
He's like, all right. He said mailbag time, baby. And you're like, all right, we're about to wrap this up.
I think it was the first thing I said.
It was literally the first thing after, man. And he's like, wait, a few more.
Bro, we started at 1 o'clock, man. It's 4 o'clock. We ran out of questions. Man. All right.
That was so funny.
I appreciate that. We have this from Andy Milton.
All right. And Andy Milton fan with a super chat, and 2-parter. 1, what Brian Kelly facial color indicates a fumble? And 2, BYU players have a bring your child to work day. Hashtag
Don't do the hashtag. Don't do the hashtag. This is a family friendly show, despite the bad example that I set yesterday. But Brian Kelly tends to have like when guys fumble, have more of a perplexed look on his face as opposed to the raging look on his face. So I'd say more of a dark pink look, where the purple is reserved more for interceptions or muff snaps or, dropped passes like TJ Jones that get intercepted in 2010 or 2011. So yeah, I'd say dark pink. How about that? Dark pink. Does that work, Trev?
Yeah, it's definitely not. Yeah, I was about to say it's definitely not
Thomas
purple
Lammer
yet.
says purple or QB mistakes. It's a great point, Thomas. That's spot on. Although the infamous one from 2011 was actually at was it TJ Jones, I believe. But it's because he dropped the pass that a quarterback threw to him. So pass game mistakes, yeah. So 2, BYU players have a bring your child to work day. It wouldn't be a terrible idea, man. I mean, I know it's a joke, but like I don't have an issue with that. You know what I mean? Like they're serving a mission. They're honoring what they believe their faith calls them to do, and they're getting married early and they have wives and children. I mean, it used to be in this country where getting married and staying married to one person and having a family and a good sized family was considered part of the American dream. You know what I mean? And I kind of wish we'd get back to that a little bit, to be honest with you. But that's just the reality of it. But yeah, I'd support that. I'd be all for that. Bring your child to work day. That'd be hilarious. So starting quarterback's kid could go, Marcus Freeman, if he was there, your starting quarterback's kid is running around, playing off to the side with Freeman's youngest kid. You know what I mean? So, because they're similar age. So, yeah. But that'd be kind of fun. Yeah. Thanks for the super chat, Indy Milton fan.
That was good.
So Trev, I didn't see any new. So the only reason we stopped it is because we pretty much ran out of questions. So we appreciate those new ones that popped up, but that'll do it, Trev. No more questions. So why don't you go ahead and take us out of here, bud?
Really good submissions today, guys. It's a lot of fun. Love Fridays. Brian, I know you do too. Really looking forward to meeting everybody. I mean, me personally, I'm also excited to just, meet the guy I've been working for the last couple months. So did things a little bit reverse order, but it's been fun nonetheless. But I'm excited to get up to South Bend. It's my first time being on campus this season, and I've been missing it. So before we get out of here today, guys, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you guys listen to this podcast on. And of course, in order to be a part of this 2025 t-shirt gang that we have rolling out, you have to make sure that you'll go to boards@irishbreakdown.com so you can enjoy those live game chats. So for Brian, I'm Trev. I hope to see so many of you guys tomorrow. As always, go Irish. Have a fun and safe weekend. And we will see you tomorrow.